Is it time?
It is time for us to do what we have been doing, and that time is every day.
We'll know in a very short period of time, but it looks like it could be something that will be not good. Believe me, not good.
I see issue with that. And again, you're
not going to be able to insult your way to the presidency. That's not going to happen.
I don't know who created Pokemon Go, but I'm trying to figure out how we get them to have Pokemon go to the polls.
I'm Ted Cruz, and my pronoun is kiss my ass.
So when you think about it, there is great significance to the passage of time in terms of what we need to do to lay these wires, what we need to do to create these jobs.
America is a nation that can be defined in a single word. I was going to put him.
Not good. Believe me, not good.
Hello, dissidents. Welcome, one and all, to a Tuesday matinee edition of the Do Dissidents podcast. Keaton Weiss here with Russell Dobula. Of course, just got to unmute your microphone.
Hello.
Russell, live from sunny Buffalo, New York. That is not a green screen backdrop, although it looks clean enough to be. It looks very
that would be a very weird choice for a green screen.
I mean, not really. It looks kind of like a generic clean room. You know,
I guess, yeah.
It's a tidy space.
Yeah, this is in Buffalo. Had the most millionaires per capita at the turn of the 20th century. So it is full of these Victorian mansions. That's what this is.
Well, that's when America was at its best.
That's
what Donald Trump said.
That's what we need to go back to.
Yeah, from 1870 to 1913, that was when we were doing great. He said that. An interview aired, I guess, this morning. That was a big, making the rounds, saying that, tariffs could replace the income tax because, back during the Gilded Age, they didn't have income tax.
You know what they used to say? They used to say, "I'm going to shuffle off to Buffalo." It's such a beautiful phrase, "shuffle off to Buffalo," because all the millionaires were in Buffalo.
Yeah, exactly.
Nobody says that anymore because there's no millionaires. There's no millionaires because we got rid of the tariffs.
It's because we got rid of the tariffs because we don't tariff anymore. We're a bunch of suckers. We're a bunch of suckers.
Now it's just crime. Now it's a bunch of my followers shooting up supermarkets. I meant their followers.
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So you're there for a month, maybe doing some, maybe thinking about relocating.
Reconnaissance. I must say. So last night I had some great barbecue. I can't figure out this town. Like, why is there so much good food? Like a variety. Like there are a lot of places that will do like one particular thing very well. But they've actually got like a good food scene with variety. There's nobody here. It's the weirdest fucking thing to me to walk through. Last night I walked through the theater district. There's nobody there, man. You got the lighted marquees. Like the fact that they can financially support this in a place that really does not have people. And again, there are these decaying Rust Belt towns where you have this old, and usually they were in their heyday in that period. A lot of them have that kind of architecture, that kind of Victorian Gothic kind of shit, but it's all falling apart. It's not here. It's really not falling apart. It's very weird, man. It's very weird. It's very like Brainiac took a little section of the earth and put it in a bottle.
Right. Right. Well, Russ will be broadcasting live from Buffalo for the next few weeks. We got a great crowd in here today, 600 strong in the YouTube chat to start things off, 363 strong over on Rumble. Let's smash that like button, everybody. Let's smash that subscribe button, as always. Smash that follow button over on Rumble, and we are going to jump right in. So we have two sort of related stories to start things off, but these are becoming all too common nowadays, but we got to report on them when they happen. We don't make the news, we just report the news. So Christopher Halali tweets out, exclusive footage, Columbia student and Palestinian Mohsen Madawi was just arrested during a visit to the immigration office here in Colchester, Vermont. More to follow. Footage, Chris Halali. Yes, he wanted to make sure that everybody knew he got the exclusive. I guess when you live in Vermont, you don't get too many opportunities for an exclusive scoop. 'Cause
Probably
it's typically a place where not much goes on. But here
not.
is
Show me on the puppet where Senator Sanders touched you.
Yeah, right. Exactly. But here is some footage that went viral pretty quickly yesterday. There he is, flashing the peace sign. In relatively good spirits, given the fact that he was essentially ambushed at an immigration meeting and was arrested, put in the car, and taken away. One more step towards a world free of anti-Semitism.
I feel safer.
Yeah, exactly. I feel safer because of that. So Drop Site News tweets out, breaking, Mohsen Madawi, a Palestinian-born green card holder and student at Columbia University, deeply involved in pro-Palestinian activism, has been arrested by HSI agents in Vermont in the middle of his appointment to become a U.S. citizen. Madawi grew up in a Palestinian refugee camp in the Israeli-occupied West Bank, where his childhood was shaped by the Second Intifada. He experienced significant personal losses, including the death of his best friend during a confrontation with Israeli soldiers when he was 10 years old. He later studied computer engineering at Birzeit University in Palestine before enrolling at Columbia in New York, where he pursued studies in philosophy at the School of General Studies. At Columbia, he has organized protests and events addressing the Israeli genocide. Madawi has also emphasized empathy, and dialogue as pathways to justice and peace. He has participated in initiatives fostering cross-cultural understanding between Palestinians and Israelis on campus. And he was actually interviewed for 60 Minutes, where, as you could see here, the fight for freedom of Palestine and the fight against anti-Semitism go hand in hand, because injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. So here's part of a 60 Minutes interview that he gave during the time of the Columbia encampments.
Action when you heard about the Hamas attack on October 7th?
I could not believe what my eyes were seeing, where I see Hamas members getting into settlements and so on. But also the first moment I saw that, I put my hand on my heart. And I started praying, knowing that there will be a huge level of revenge from the Israelis. And I was praying that this will not be the result, because it would be disastrous.
The night of the rally, I believe someone in the crowd said something very anti-Jewish, not just anti-Israeli, but anti-Jewish.
Yes, this was as a walkout on November 9th. And a person who is not affiliated with Colombia, we've never seen him, we don't know who is this guy, comes down the stairs yelling, "Death to Jews." I was shocked, and I walked directly to the person and I told him, "You don't represent us, because this is not something that we agree with." And directly what I've done, I took the megaphone and I gave a speech and I said, "We here are conscious, educated students, and we know how to separate right from wrong. And what this guy has said is wrong. What this guy has said is clearly anti-Semitic against Jews."
Anti-Semitic.
To be anti-Semitic is unjust. And the fight for the freedom of Palestine and the fight against anti-Semitism go hand in hand, because injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere.
Okay, so that was not an interview done man on the street style. That was on 60 Minutes. So those trying to build a case against this guy could see pretty clearly he's among the more moderate protesters, even. So, that was clearly available for all to see on a show like 60 Minutes. The New Republic wrote a piece here. Every part of this ICE arrest is horrific, especially the location. Mohsen Madawi, a Palestinian student leader at Columbia, was arrested in a trap set by federal immigration agents. The Trump administration used the citizenship interview as a pretext to arrest a Columbia University student of Palestinian descent. Mohsen Madawi, a U.S. permanent resident who has lived in the country for 10 years, showed up to what he thought was his citizenship interview Monday at the U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services office in Colchester, Vermont. Instead, he was arrested by U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, which has begun deportation proceedings. The Columbia University student was a leader in the school's protests against Israel's brutal war in Gaza. Madawi was fearful of being deported even before his friend, Columbia graduate Mahmoud Khalil, was arrested last month by federal immigration agents. Madawi was included on a list of students the far-right pro-Israel organization Betar gave to the Trump administration in the hopes that they would be deported. Betar and the group documenting Jew hatred on campus at Columbia U also posted on social media multiple times about Madawi, tagging law enforcement agencies on each post. After asking university officials to find him a safe place to live where he wouldn't be detained by ICE and receiving no response, Madawi went into hiding before receiving an email notifying him of a citizenship interview at the UCSIS office earlier this month. Madawi worried that it was a trap and contacted his elected representatives in Vermont, Representative Becca Balint and Senators Bernie Sanders and Peter Welch. Yeah, that kind of explains why he looks so calm and at peace in the video. You see again, didn't exactly seem shocked by this. Kind of seems like he saw it coming, unlike Ozturk, who we have a segment on coming up next.
Right.
She seemed genuinely shocked to be just plucked off the street in that way. All three promised to remain on standby, meaning the three representatives, the one congressperson and the two senators, pending Madawi's status after the interview, with Welch speaking to Madawi directly. In the end, it was a trap, and Madawi was detained with the same obscure immigration law used to detain Khalil and several other international students, including permanent residents, that their presence in the U.S. is a threat to the country's foreign policy interests. And more specifically now, we know because of Marco Rubio's memo as it pertained to Mahmoud Khalil, their foreign policy interest not being a military objective on behalf of Israel, but being a worldwide fight against anti-Semitism, which is the wokest foreign policy interest you could possibly think of. Brought to you by the anti-wokesters. But Nick Sorter thinks this is great. LAMO, the leader of Columbia University's anti-Israel riots, Mohsen Madawi, was arrested by ICE during his U.S. citizenship interview. He thinks it's really funny. That's how it's done. He is now slated to be deported back to Palestine. Nice work, Secretary Noem. So, yep, that's the crowd. That's the crowd cheering this on. These are the free speech people. I'm sure you could go back and find dozens of tweets of Nick Sorters about the various free speech infringements of Joe Biden and a would-be Kamala Harris, and perhaps even as far back as the Obama years, if he was active then. I don't know if he was active then. Probably not. Seems like a fairly young guy. But the point remains. I mean, it's just absolutely horrible. It's just horrible. Here is another piece of video that I'm going to show you. This was taken by Jeremy Lafredo for the Gray Zone, who caught up with Mohsen at one of the Columbia encampments.
It is a huge disappointment. It's not a surprise. It is a huge disappointment that we come to a country that is bragging itself for free speech, bragging itself for holding the principles of human rights, and at the same time contradicting themselves when it comes to the Palestinian movement and to the Palestinian cause. our demands are aligned with two principles. The first principle is equal human rights for all, for the Palestinians. I am myself a refugee, was born and raised in a refugee camp in the West Bank, and my family is still living in a refugee camp in the West Bank as a third generation. So we are demanding equal human rights for all, since we live under an apartheid system, and as well as the second principle, which is the free speech here on campus, which is part of a human right as well, a human right demands. The strongest supporter of Israel is the United States. As we see the bombs, most of the bombs that have been dropped on Gaza, the different weapons that they send to Israel, and the continuous vetoes that happens in the United Nations all the time by the United States practice. So it's not a surprise that they are trying to shut down even a peaceful, diverse movement that, as you see, so beautiful. We get a class that's being held there. We get a yoga
look at
that
this
is
riot.
being held
Look
there.
at these rioters.
We get many different programs. All of these are aligned with the idea that
Apparently,
we need to
you've never
coexist,
heard of the
to
yoga
live in
riots of
peace
Krishnamurti.
and to ask for dignity for all
Very
people.
infamous.
So the United States government taking a position against this is a violation for the same principles and values that the United States itself holds and that this university holds. The core of our movement is not a threat to anybody, but it's a threat to systems of injustice, and Israel is a huge system of injustice. So they're trying to shut us down, trying to silence us, and we have said it before that our voices are much louder than the money and the power that Columbia University and beyond Columbia that's happening, because we are living now, we are paving the path for the new world, a peaceful world.
So what a
lunatic.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, what a just a calm, measured, well-spoken man. Doesn't matter. I mean, time after time we see this. Ozturk wrote an op-ed, as we'll see in the next segment, that was really all the evidence that they had on her. It simply doesn't matter. If you are not a native-born citizen, you have no right to oppose Israel. That's as of now. Coming soon, nobody has a right to oppose Israel.
Exactly. This is the craziest, sickest, most deranged Zionist fanatics have been empowered by this administration to decide who they want to get deported. Miriam told her sock puppet, that's what this looks like. Yes, I know the people at Batad. They are wonderful. You should listen. They have a list of all the people. Miriam, say no more. Say no more. Right? And these people just go. Thinking about the poise and the grace of people who have experienced the circumstances that he did in the West Bank, who still care to make that distinction between what he experienced and Jews as a whole, and to make such an impassioned argument against anti-Semitism.
One more case, and we'll see where he ends up. But now we have a segment coming up about Rumeysa Ozturk talking about the shape that she is in, and just the deportation is an indignity of its own kind. You add to that the injustice of just keeping them around in jail. I mean, they have to be in jail now for however long until it is decided where they're going to go.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, and the wokeness of it. It's the same exact claims of the woke people. It's always an existential threat to their safety, right? You're literally threatening our lives. You're literally committing a genocide, right? These superheated, hyperbolic accusations. It's exactly the same playbook. I always despised those people because it was always clear to me that if you gave them permission and you gave them power, they would lock people up for speech. And here you go. Same thing on the other side.
Yep. Indeed. Michael Castillo, thanks for the $5. Good afternoon, gentlemen. Keaton, let's go watch a Buffalo Bills game. I would ask Russ, but he would tell me to go pound sand. I'm 4 hours from Buffalo. I am a 4-hour drive from Buffalo. I am pretty far away. But New York is a big state. Big state, my friend. Kuznetsky Bassane, thanks for the $9.99. Meet the new billionaires, same as the old billionaires. Thank you. Brio Dundada, how will USA host the FIFA World Cup? When are we due to host the World Cup?
Are we doing that?
Is that true? I don't know. Bukele be like, bring me the head of Abrego Garcia movie reference. There we go. Thank you. Victor Shakapopoulos, appreciate that. Good afternoon, scumbag, douchebags, gaylords, and all cats named Vagina. Courage. Thank you, Noah. Appreciate that very much. Conda Strike, hey DD. Hey Conda Strike, how are you? Hillary Hitton, I love you dirtbags almost enough to spend $50 that I can't afford just to have you play the Finkelstein ignorant sack of shit quote as my drop. Sorry about the dirtbags thing. Thank you, Hillary Hitton. Appreciate that very much. Noah Goop says, sad to hear Russell Slobular and Keaton lies spreading more hoaxes just like Russia. Pathetic. Thank you for your attention to this matter. Thank you, Noah. Appreciate that very, very much. Okay, what else we got here? Okay, we're going to move right on into segment number 2. This is kind of a related story, but I just want to show you guys. Here, let me set this up once more time. Sorry. Okay, so we have
yeah. Can you emote? Can you emote? That felt flat.
Yeah, that was flat. Yeah, exactly.
Flat. Let's see your anxiety for this woman.
Yeah, exactly.
I want to read that on your face.
All right, folks. So we have some updates on a previous student roundup. This is, of course, the arrest of Rumeysa Ozturk. ICE arrested Tufts graduate Rumeysa Ozturk a year after she co-authored a pro-Palestinian op-ed and was flagged for anti-Israel activism. This was a full 3 weeks ago, of course, March 26th. That feels like a year ago, but it was less than a month ago. So just to refresh your memory. So they roust her, they take her to the car. Sure, you all remember that video pretty well. When asked what's going on here, what happened to this woman, was her visa revoked? Is she going to be deported? What's going to happen? Here's Marco Rubio explaining the case against Rumeysa Ozturk.
It's an F1 visa, I believe. We revoked it, and here's why. And I'll say it again. I said it everywhere. Let me be abundantly clear, okay? If you go apply for a visa right now, anywhere in the world, let me just send this message out. If you apply for a visa to enter the United States and be a student, and you tell us that the reason why you're coming to the United States is not just because you want to write op-eds, but because you want to participate in movements that are involved in doing things like vandalizing universities, harassing students, taking over buildings, creating a ruckus, we're not going to give you a visa. If you lie to us and get a visa and then enter the United States and with that visa participate in that sort of activity, we're going to take away your visa. And once you've lost your visa, you're no longer legally in the United States, and we have a right, like every country in the world has a right, to remove you from our country. So it's just that simple. I think it's crazy. I think it's stupid for any country in the world to welcome people into their country that are going to go to your universities as visitors. They're visitors. And say, I'm going to your universities to start a riot. I'm going to your universities to take over a library and harass people. I don't care what movement you're involved in. Why would any country in the world allow people to come and disrupt? Now, we gave you a visa to come and study and get a degree, not to become a social activist that tears up our university campuses. And if we've given you a visa and then you decide to do that, we're going to take it away. I encourage every country to do that, by the way, because I think it's crazy to invite students into your country that are coming onto your campus and destabilizing it. We're just not going to have it. So we'll revoke your visa, and once your visa is revoked, you're illegally in the country and you have to leave. Every country in the world has a right to decide who comes in as a visitor and who doesn't. If you invite me into your home because you say, I want to come to your house for dinner, and I go to your house and I start putting mud on your couch and spray painting your kitchen, I bet you're going to kick me out. But we're going to do the same thing if you come into the United States as a visitor and create a ruckus for us. We don't want it. We don't want it in our country. Go back and do it in your country. But you're not going to do it in our country.
Okay. All right. So even assuming the premise of what he's talking about is valid, which I would, of course, argue is not.
If you come to our country and exercise the rights we claim to stand for, we don't want you.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Because that's basically what he's saying. What he's basically saying is if you come to our country and actually take advantage of our First Amendment, which the rights under which are afforded to you as someone who is on U.S. soil, then we'll kick you out. Right. So I don't agree with the premise of what he's saying. But even if I did, that's Marco Rubio. And it just came out that Marco Rubio's State Department knew all along there was no evidence linking Tufts student to anti-Semitism or terrorism. State Department office found. Days before, masked Immigration and Customs Enforcement agents detained Tufts University student Rumeysa Ozturk to deport her, the State Department determined that the Trump administration had not produced any evidence showing that she engaged in anti-Semitic activities or made public statements supporting a terrorist organization, as the government has alleged. The finding, contained in a March memo that was described to the Washington Post, said Secretary of State Marco Rubio did not have sufficient grounds for revoking Ozturk's visa under an authority empowering the top U.S. diplomat to safeguard the foreign policy interests of the United States. The memo, written by an office within the State Department, raises doubts about the public accusations made by the Trump administration as it has sought to justify Ozturk's deportation. The Department of Homeland Security has said Ozturk engaged in activities in support of Hamas, a U.S.-designated terrorist organization, but neither that agency nor U.S. prosecutors have provided evidence for that claim. When asked about the memo, the State Department said, "We do not comment on ongoing or pending litigation." DHS did not respond to a request for comment. So neither the State Department nor the Department of Homeland Security has had anything to say in response.
And this just quickly, this does kind of suggest that they're literally going off lists from Batar and groups like Batar.
Yeah,
because
Batar,
it looks like they didn't even
Mission.
look into it.
Yeah, yeah. Well,
They got a list,
actually,
and they just went after people on the list.
They actually did know of her op-ed, which is interesting. DHS originally recommended the revocation of Ozturk's visa under an authority in the Immigration and Nationality Act that allows for the deportation of a foreigner if the Secretary of State has reasonable grounds to believe the person's presence or activities has adverse policy consequence for the United States, according to a copy of a separate memo reviewed by the Post and sent by DHS to the State Department before her detention last month. I find it worth mentioning every time because we're going to clip this separately. In this case, the foreign policy interest is the fight against anti-Semitism. That's the foreign policy interest that they are claiming, which is a very abstract foreign policy interest and I would say unachievable foreign policy interest to the eradication of anti-Semitism. Ozturk engaged in anti-Israel activism in the wake of the Hamas terrorist attacks on Israelis on October 7, 2023, says the memo from senior DHS official Andre Watson to senior State Department official John Armstrong. Specifically, Watson's memo says Ozturk co-authored an op-ed article that called for Tufts to disclose its investments and divest from companies with direct or indirect ties to Israel. So the memo cites her op-ed as evidence, which means they were looking for evidence. And apparently that was all they had. They didn't even have participation in an actual physical active protest itself. So here, Newsweek has a video. Rumeysa Ozturk's lawyers are challenging the legal authority for ICE's detention. They are asking that she be immediately released from custody or, in the alternative, be returned to Vermont for further proceedings.
Oh, what, they moved her to Louisiana
today
too?
Was arguing for Rumeysa's immediate release and, in the alternative, having her returned to Vermont so that the proceedings can continue. The court took that under advisement, and we're going to wait to hear from the court. But I think one of the things that is so critical is we have seen both in the District of Massachusetts and in the District of Vermont, how seriously the courts are taking this issue and how quickly they're moving.
She is stuck in detention for an op-ed. The government hasn't presented any evidence to support this, but for some memos that talk about the op-ed. And so the fact that she's sitting in detention now for over 2 weeks is heartbreaking to me and to all of us as Americans, because that's not what our country stands for.
For writing an op-ed, yes, in a college paper. And yes, she is in Louisiana. Tough student ICE grabbed off street says hijab was removed. Asthma wasn't treated at Louisiana facility. The Tufts University student federal immigration agents detained last month detailed the inhumane and unsafe conditions at the Louisiana ICE facility she is being held in, writing in a declaration that she had limited access to food, that she had to wait hours for toilet paper, and that she is not getting proper treatment for her asthma. Rumeysa Ozturk, a doctoral student from Turkey, also accused a nurse in the facility's medical center of removing her hijab without asking permission. The conditions in the facility are very unsanitary, unsafe, and inhumane, Ozturk said in the declaration, which NBC News obtained Sunday night. There is a mouse in our cell. The boxes they provide for our clothing are very dirty, and they don't give us adequate hygiene supplies, says the declaration filed in the U.S. District Court for Vermont. She said in the declaration that she was on the phone with her mother when the agents approached her on the sidewalk. Video of her arrest showed a plainclothes male agent wave at her and say, "Hey, ma'am." Ozturk, appearing confused, tried to walk around the agent, but he stepped in front of her. The pair appeared to have a brief conversation before the agent grabbed her hands so he could handcuff her, the video showed. Ozturk said in the declaration that her first thought was that the agents were private individuals who wanted to harm me, because as the video shows, they were not wearing any kind of uniforms or anything like that. Ozturk alleged that one of the agents said that we are not monsters and that they do what the government tells us. Oh, that sounds familiar.
That sounds familiar, yeah.
Yeah. The agent
Following
also,
orders.
That's right.
Following orders.
Following orders. The agent also told her whatever she said could be used against her. Ozturk said she was held overnight in Vermont before she was transported to the Immigration and Customs Enforcement Detention Center in Louisiana. She alleged that while she was held in Vermont, the officers asked her about wanting to apply for asylum and if I was a member of a terrorist organization. The ordeal caused Ozturk to have an asthma attack on her way to Louisiana, the declaration says. I asked for the medication I am prescribed to treat asthma, but I was told there was no place to buy it and that I would get it at my final destination, it says. My asthma finally passed after I used my emergency inhaler twice, but it took some time and I was in pain. She said that during the first week in the Louisiana detention center, she was not allowed to go outside, and that during the first 2 weeks, access to food and supplies was very limited because of their systems to request these items, according to the declaration. Ozturk said she has had multiple asthma attacks at the Louisiana facility. During one attack, she said she was taken to the medical center for treatment, and the nurse took her temperature, told her, "You need to take that thing off her head," and then took Ozturk's hijab without asking her permission. I told her, "You can't take off my hijab," and she said, "This is for your health," the declaration said. Ozturk said she put her hijab back on and alleged that the nurse treated her only with ibuprofen. Ozturk said in the declaration that she fears her asthma is not being properly treated and it will not be adequately treated while I remain in ICE custody. So this just demonstrates yet another element of this injustice, where it's not just that they're arresting people and deporting them, which would be bad enough, obviously. But, you know, assuming these trials and these court cases, these lawsuits go on for months and months and months, they're in jail for that time. You have people just sitting in jail for, in her case, writing an op-ed. In the previous gentleman's case here, which we covered earlier in the show, I always want to make sure I get his name right, Mohsen Madawi, is going to be sitting in jail for as long as these cases are debated and for as long as the process plays out. which is another injustice in itself. I mean, just think about that. Think about that. You have now in America a woman legally here on a visa in jail, in a horrible jail, it sounds like, for the crime of writing an op-ed.
Yeah, it's amazing how many people think this is not going to come back on American citizens, and it's even more disturbing how many people relish that prospect. This is fascism. Fascists support fascist systems because they assume that since they're fascists and they're on the side of the fascists, it's not going to have any adverse consequences for them or anyone that they care about. Once you let this kind of thing out of the bottle, once you have an administration that at this point, as we'll cover, is ignoring a court order, pretending it doesn't exist, pretending they can't execute. And we knew this was coming as soon as we saw them start doing things like this. They got there very quickly to defying the courts.
Right.
Now you've got an oligarchic class trying to rebuild the country in a way that allows them to run it with completely arbitrary control. And they're getting their followers to cheer for it by calling the judges unelected George Soros puppets, which is weird because Trump picked George Soros's protege as his Treasury Secretary. But they're using all of these bugaboos. They're libs. And they're using that to get the people who, in my opinion, they plan on leaving in a state of absolute impoverishment and desperation. And that's what all of this is about. They know that these people are going to come for them, and they are dismantling all of the protections these people might have when they realize they've been had. This is as much about owning the libs as it is about making sure that their own base can't come for them later, and that they can send them to El Salvador when they do.
Right. Yeah, exactly. I mean, as we get into, Trump has floated now multiple times the prospect of sending American citizens to El Salvador. And
Right.
so, when people talk about the possibility that this will happen, and when people talk about how if the government can do things that they're doing to Kilmar Abrego Garcia, they could do it to you. That's not speculation. That's not Trump derangement
They're talking
syndrome.
about it.
They're talking about it. And at this point, you're essentially quoting Donald Trump himself. And,
It's only going to be for the worst. Okay. Well, so why are 90% of the people being sent to CCOT not wanted for a crime?
Right.
If it's only going to be the worst.
Right. Right. Yep. 100%. And, when it comes to these kinds of cases, you're just seeing there's a theme here, which is just an attempt to really purge the country of the undesirables, whether they are illegal immigrants, legal asylum seekers, pro-Palestine protesters, right? If you are on their bad list, there's really nothing they won't do to you. They're making that as clear as they possibly can very, very early on. And there's still 3 years and 9 months left to go.
Yeah. And I hope a lot of people who got really, really excited about Tulsi Gabbard and Pam Bondi and Kash Patel, they were going to go after the deep state. As a lot of people have observed, you can't ignore people's position on Palestine because it has so many implications in so many areas. They did not all of a sudden take off their masks once they got confirmed. They all told you they were going to do this. This is exactly what they said. Bondi said, we're going to use the FBI to go after students. Kash Patel said, we're not doing enough for Israel. What did you think was going to happen when they got in office? That was going to be okay as long as they cut off USAID funding.
Right.
What did you think would happen? This is why there are certain things that are not open to discussion, that are absolutely disqualifying. And they made it very clear that they were morally disqualified from holding power before they ever held it.
Yes, absolutely. EO Shush said, you guys are overreacting a bit. Give Trump a chance. And if he starts locking up trade unionists for thought crimes, then say something. And if he finds Bill Maher's jokes funny, how bad can Trump be? Thank you, EO Shush. Appreciate that.
You know, I'm starting to see it your way. That was very persuasive.
Yes, exactly. Kenman G, who says America isn't great anymore? We sent bimbos into space. That's right. No one has ever seen anything like it. That's right.
I almost did that, but
yeah.
I couldn't justify it.
Yeah. Whitney Webb is connecting the Diddy Epstein thing with Gary Webb and Danny Castellaro, which makes it a Cthulhu octopus on steroids. Sorry about the black pill, but I think I officially give up. Yeah, I've heard about that. I haven't had a chance to read that yet, though. It's a pretty big piece, as I understand, as most of her stuff is. Kids Corner, since Russell's plan to move to Buffalo, will we see a Due Dissidents Wing Summit or maybe a Hot Ones competition for patrons?
It's a very big maybe. It's certainly not anything I've decided to do.
Michael Castillo says Zionism to Judaism what the KKK is to Christianity. Free Palestine. Thank you, Michael Castillo. Appreciate that very much. All right. We got Michael Castillo again. It's April 15th, 2025, but it's still October 7th, 2023. Free Palestine. Have a lovely day, gentlemen. Thank you, Michael. Appreciate that very much. All right, folks. Let's move right along to the big news of the day, or as I should say, the big news of yesterday, the Bukele visit to Washington, D.C.
All right. This was quite an event. They had a big sit down here with the press, in which the entire cabinet acquitted itself very, very admirably. First up was Pam Bondi.
Says was mistakenly deported. The man who was mistakenly deported to El Salvador.
Well, let me ask Pam, would you answer that question?
Sure, President. First and foremost, he was illegally in our country. He had been illegally in our country. And in 2019, two courts, an immigration court and an appellate immigration court, ruled that he was a member of MS-13 and he was illegally in our country. Right now,
That's
it was
a lie.
Paperwork. It was additional paperwork had needed to be done. That's up to El Salvador if they want to return him. That's not up to us. The Supreme Court ruled, President, that if, as El Salvador wants to return him, this is international matters, foreign affairs. If they wanted to return him, we would facilitate it, meaning provide a plane.
So will you return him?
And you are doing a great job.
Thank you.
Wait a minute.
You are doing a great job. You are the best sugar baby this town has seen since Dolly Madison, honey. You keep going, sweetheart. So you've got an attorney general who is willing to lie, one lie after another, about a legal proceeding. A little bit about Garcia's case. He was detained in 2019 alongside 3 other young men who were soliciting employment outside a Home Depot. Officers with the Prince George's County Police Department repeatedly asked Abrego Garcia whether he was a gang member, which he denied. He was taken into ICE custody, with agents arguing that local police had verified that he was an active member of MS-13 with the Western Clique in New York, based on his Chicago Bulls hat and hoodie and the words of a confidential informant. He's never lived in New York State, by the way. Pretty hard to join the gang when you've never actually been to the state. The details from the informant, which officials have not disclosed, did not result in Abrego Garcia being charged with a crime or otherwise implicated. Nothing came of it, U.S. District Court Judge Paula Zinnes wrote. Abrego Garcia has never been arrested or charged with any crime in either the United States or El Salvador, according to public records and his attorneys. Everything she said there was a lie, saying the 2 courts confirmed he was an MS-13. Quite the opposite. Quite the opposite. They found there was really nothing there. That he's in the country illegally. He entered the country illegally, but he was issued an order by a court that he was allowed to stay in the country because of credible reason to fear for his life. Why was he fearing for his life? Because a gang, Barrio 18, not MS-13, had threatened his family and tried to force him into joining the gang as a shakedown of the family food business.
Right.
This is the kind of person, this is part of what's so tragic about this. You look at Abrego Garcia, somebody who escaped this terrible situation in a country where you can't have a successful small business without some gang coming to shake you down. He escapes to this country. He gets married. He has a family, becomes an apprentice to a sheet metal union. This is the kind of person who, if you treat him right, will be fanatically patriotic, more patriotic than the average American, because this is the country that saved him from that situation and gave him that opportunity. Instead, you treat him like a criminal, which he was not. Again, he was not. He was escaping from gangs. He was not a member of a gang. So everything she said there is a lie. This whole display was just grotesque. So then Stephen Miller weighs in with his own lies about the Supreme Court decision. It was a big win.
The Supreme Court said the district court order was unlawful and its main components were reversed 9-0 unanimously, stating clearly that neither Secretary of State nor the President could be compelled by anybody to forcibly retrieve a citizen of El Salvador from El Salvador, who again is a member of MS-13, which, as I'm sure you understand, rapes little girls, murders women, murders children, is engaged in the most barbaric activities in the world, and I can promise you, if he was your neighbor, you would move right away.
So you don't plan to ask for any longer to get him back?
Yeah, no, the apprentice sheet metal guy who's never actually been convicted of a crime in any country, family man. Yeah, no, I'd be terrified if he lived next door to me. So again, throughout this, they just repeat the lie that he was a member of MS-13, something that's been completely debunked. That was debunked 6 years ago in court. And then he lies about the meaning of the Supreme Court decision. He's honing in on the fact that they ruled that it's not clear if courts can force the government to act in a situation that involves a foreign nation. But they certainly ruled that they need to bring him back. And part of what's really remarkable about this is the administration itself acknowledges that it was a mistake to deport him. If he was not legally allowed here, then what mistake are you acknowledging?
Right.
Supreme Court on Thursday instructed the government to take steps to return a Salvadoran migrant it had wrongly deported to a notorious prison in El Salvador. In an unsigned order, the court stopped short of ordering the return of the migrant, Kilmar Abrego Garcia, indicating that courts may not have the power to require the executive branch to do so. But the court endorsed part of a trial judge's order that had required the government to facilitate and effectuate the return of Mr. Abrego Garcia. So he's distorting the foreign policy element of that to make it sound as if they were all good with this. 9-0 decision. They were all good with this. The liberal media is distorting it like they do. All right. So then little Marco, a traitor to his own people, as we will see, maybe more than a lot of you may realize. This was what little Marco, formerly little Marco, had to say about this.
Understand what the confusion is. This individual is a citizen of El Salvador. He was illegally in the United States and was returned to his country. That's where you deport people, back to their country of origin, except for Venezuela that wasn't refusing to take people back, or places like that. I can tell you this, Mr. President, no, the foreign policy of the United States is conducted by the President of the United States, not by a court. And no court in the United States has a right to conduct the foreign policy of the United States. It's that simple. End of story.
And that's what the Supreme Court held, by the way, to Marco's point. The Supreme Court said exactly what Marco said, that no court has the authority to compel the foreign policy function of the United States.
Okay, so he's lying about him being in the country illegally. Again, they keep lying and lying about this because they kind of have to justify everything else that they're arguing. Once again, arguing that the court ruled that they can't interfere in the foreign policy of the United States. Now, understand as an American citizen, because the administration is acknowledging itself that it was a mistake to deport him. So what's to stop them from deporting you to a foreign country and then saying, oopsie?
Right.
What's to
right.
stop
If it's not in their hands anymore. Right.
Right. The same exact legal theory would allow them to disappear any American citizen to a foreign country without any authority being able to interfere. If you're comfortable with that, I'm sorry, you're a fucking moron.
Well, yeah, obviously. And in this case, which we'll get to more thoroughly later, the foreign governments who, whose toes we dare not step on is clearly doing this in the first place to curry favor with our government. That's clearly why he's doing it. They already named his country the safest place in South America.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm sure that's true. Yeah, I'm sure there was nothing corrupt about that. Right? I'm sure that wasn't part of some quid pro quo kind of thing.
Has anyone told him Americans don't have the tourist dollars to spend?
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
On a case 9-0, and people like CNN are portraying it as a loss, as usual, because they want foreign terrorists in the country who kidnap women and children. But President Trump, his policy is foreign terrorists that are here illegally get expelled from the country, which, by the way, is a 90-10 issue.
Well, Mr. President, you said that if the Supreme Court said someone needed to be returned, that you would abide by that. You said that on Air Force One just a few days ago. And they said that it must be facilitated.
Why don't you just say, isn't it wonderful that we're keeping criminals out of our country? Why can't you just say that? Why do you go over and over? And that's why nobody watches you anymore. You have no credibility. Please, go ahead.
President Trump,
that was Caitlin Collins that he was addressing there. The Chuds got very, very excited about that. He owned her. He owned her. So here's a little bit about Marco Rubio that you might not know. We might not be privileged to have such an outstanding Secretary of State if they had applied the standards to his grandfather that we're applying to Abrego Garcia.
Rubio's grandfather was ordered deported when he came to this country, and ultimately actually was not deported. He was in the country illegally, was not deported, and was retroactively given some form of asylum, which all that is to say, he took advantage of a process that existed for him, just like many of these immigrants do. Maybe they are in the country illegally, but they go to a judge and they make their case, and that's a process. It was a process that worked for Marco Rubio's grandfather. It was a process that worked for him, and he's sitting there in the Oval Office now saying that process should not be available to everybody else.
And that is where these people are really the scum of the earth. For your ambition to so completely override any ethics you might have. It's in his biography, so clearly he knows the history of his own family. And yet, this could be your grandfather, man. This could be your grandfather that this happened. Your grandfather entered the country illegally to escape Castro. This guy entered the country illegally to escape Barrio 18. If they had applied this standard to your grandfather, you would not be sitting there as Secretary of State today.
Yeah, no, he's just a complete worm. I mean, they're all just the lowest of the low.
Just a cabinet of criminals.
Yeah.
So Representative Jim McGovern sent a letter. We'll have a little more on this later. Read my new urgent demand for answers. The American people deserve to know what Marco Rubio and Bukele agreed to. If this deal is so great, why are our own leaders afraid to make it public? Release it now. Now, you know what? They really missed an opportunity here, right? Because MS-13 is a terrorist group, and they're saying they have the right to do whatever they want with anyone who's affiliated with this group. They had Bukele right there in the Oval Office, who apparently has been investigated for his own ties to MS-13. We are concerned that the Trump administration has failed to fully investigate alleged ties between President Bukele and MS-13 gangs, now designated as foreign terrorist organizations. These ties, confirmed by the Treasury Department in their 2021 sanctioning of Osiris Luna Meza and Carlos Amilcar Marroquin Chica, noted, quote, in 2020, Salvadoran President Nayib Bukele's administration provided financial incentives to Salvadoran gangs MS-13 and 18th Street Gang Barrio 18, that's the gang that went after Garcia's family, to ensure that incidents of gang violence and the number of confirmed homicides remained low. So he's paying off MS-13. He's paying them off. They could have gotten them right there. Look, you had an MS-13 affiliated terrorist sitting right next to the president, and you let him get away.
That's right. Should have sent him to CCOT. Oh, wait, he owns CCOT.
Oh, yeah.
He runs CCOT.
See, therein lay the rub. This poster, Timothy Snyder, put it very well. On the White House's theory, if they abduct you, get you on a helicopter, get to international waters, shoot you in the head, and drop your corpse into the ocean, that is legal because it is the conduct of foreign affairs. Yes, exactly. Exactly. This is, if okay, so you hate immigrants. Fine. Do you understand the kind of power that you are giving to the president? For anyone who claims to believe in the Constitution, it's interesting. A lot of conservatives like to carry around the Constitution right in their pocket. They'll wave around the Constitution. We had a revolution because we did not, well, for a lot of reasons, but part of the core premise was you don't want power concentrated in the hands of a king. This was a kind of radical idea at the time, right? Most governments were monarchies in the Western world at that time. So you get rid of the king because people don't have the kinds of protections that, according to our Constitution, they are entitled to. These rights are inalienable. You have taken a bunch of amoral, narcissistic, psychopathic oligarchs and put them in a position where they are testing whether they can get away with the absolute arbitrary exercise of power. We have never had anything like what they are trying to do in a technologically advanced modern nation. You got Elon rifling through the government systems with AI, getting everybody's information. They have a capacity to build a police state that the monarchs of old could never even dream of. The fascists of old could never even dream of. You're talking about a very wealthy country with virtually unlimited resources, testing to see whether they can take down all of the boundaries. And this case and this man has wound up being their test case for what they can get away with. That is why it is so important that they don't.
Yeah, and this foreign government that is supposedly outside the jurisdiction of the United States and outside the purview of the Supreme Court is just a government that the United States bought into being our puppet, which is essentially what Bukele is. He built this, supermax prison. He started locking people up in his own country without due process, which I'm assuming get more into it in the next piece. And he comes to the United States smiling from ear to ear the whole time he's there because he knows he has a loyal friend now in Donald Trump. Not just a loyal friend, but he has a cash cow. They're getting paid to put these people up, $20,000 a head. And it only costs them $6,000 at most, I would argue, given the conditions there. It's probably less than that. It only costs them $6,000 a year per inmate per year to house people. So what is his incentive to look into possible mistakes, and B, even more importantly and more severely in this case, what is his incentive to side with the court over Donald Trump when clearly he has a very, very powerful, I won't even say ally, he has a backer in Donald Trump. I mean, the Trump administration has essentially bought his support. So where do his loyalties lie, to Trump or to the court? And since he is foreign, since he's a foreign government, he doesn't answer to the Supreme Court anyway. So that's the worst of both worlds. That's the absolute worst case scenario. It's worse than Guantanamo. It's worse than Guantanamo.
Well,
because this now gets into the realm of, well, it's foreign policy. It's not foreign policy. It's not foreign policy. We basically bought off a stooge to torture whoever we want to when we send them there. And because he is the president of a sovereign nation, we can't then tell him what to do once they're in his hands.
Yes, and we'll see this in the next piece. It's much easier to take people outside the jurisdiction of the law than it is to remove the law from the people. They put a lot of thought into this. They say, okay, man, who do we have who's going to do whatever we want and we can just pay them off, who wants to align with our whole vision of a modern day feudal order? Hey, that guy Bukele, that screwball who made Bitcoin legal tender, that guy, he's friends with Elon. He's friends with Pete. I bet we can make a deal with him. Well, anybody we want to get rid of, we'll send him down there. When the courts complain, we'll say, hey, it's out of our hands. Foreign policy.
Right, exactly.
You don't have any jurisdiction in foreign policy. They didn't stumble into this. They gave, not Trump, but their legal people gave this a lot of thought. How can we disappear people in a country where everyone's supposed to have equal justice under the law? We send them to a third-party country and then claim foreign policy privilege.
Right. Exactly. All right. I'm assuming this is the segment break.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, cool. All right. We'll take some super chats here because it's kind of a two-parter. John Locke, thanks for the $20. Appreciate that super sticker very much. Appreciate that. You got to load some videos in, right, while I'm doing these? Is that correct? Okay.
Yep. Yes, I do.
All right. Milton Crow, thanks for the $10. Marco Rubio, Anchor Baby. There you go. Thank you, Milton Crow. Appreciate that. Ryan Spence says, according to Scott Ritter, if you hate America, just leave. Oh, yeah? Is that what he said to somebody recently? Regine Jolly, thanks for the $5 and the super sticker. Appreciate that. Tammy Elisa, thanks for the $9.99. Been watching you guys a long time and wanted to send some love. Also, it's contagious when both of you laugh, especially Keaton's man giggle. Thank you. Yes, I do have a bit of a man giggle. Hey, Russ, Buffalo is ghost after 5 p.m. I find that quite weird for a city with a national football team. And it's surprisingly small, too. You've got to check out Amherst, Tonawanda. Yeah, there's an Amherst in New York. Green Bay, Wisconsin, that's a small city that has its own football team. It's weird. Some NFL teams are in pretty small towns. Stoop sign. What did I do here? TGI Fridays in Germany is called Arbeit Mike Freitags. Thank you, Stoop sign. Appreciate that very much. Otacon, if they keep this up, it will inevitably end with some people getting shot. And how will this administration respond then? Watch out for false flags. And remember, REX84B. Thank you, Otacon. Appreciate that very much. Okay. What do we got over here? We have Blanco SoCal over on YouTube. Thanks for the $5. Trump is bad, fine. Watch everyone else's voting record. I'd be surprised if these pro-clutchers don't have less than 89% complicity with him. Well, we're actually going to do one piece about a Democratic senator who says that he's going to go to El Salvador to try and get this guy back. And that'll be interesting to see. How that shakes out for sure. We got 1,400 strong in the YouTube chat. We got 731 strong on Rumble, folks. Please smash that like button, smash that subscribe button. Thanks everybody very much for being here. What do we got? Are we ready yet?
I'll have to load the rest in, but we're fine for the next segment.
All right, very well. All right, then let's get to it.
Let me just cue it properly. All right, cool. All right, so when Dane met Bukele. So End Wokeness, professional piece of shit, put out, breaking, Judge Paula Zinnes orders Trump to return a suspected MS-13 member from an El Salvadoran jail. Bukele thought this was hilarious, tweeted this out in response to it. It's hilarious. The idea that this innocent family man, apprentice sheet metal worker has been put into this hellish violation of human rights prison that he built. Hilarious. Elon thought it was really funny too. Wow. This is a guy who gets teary-eyed about his stock price going down on Fox, but he thinks this is hilarious because it's happening to peasants. It's happening to peasants. It's not happening to people like them. It doesn't matter. So Bukele, in the Oval Office session they just had with the cabinet, with the reporters, was asked if he would consider releasing Abrego Garcia.
Can President Bukele weigh in on this? Do you plan to return him?
Well, I'm supposed to not suggesting that I smuggle terrorists into the United States, right?
It's always
how can I smuggle? How can I return him to the United States? Like I smuggle him into the United States, or what do I do? Of course, I'm not going to do it. It's like.
Okay, so now first of all, he's calling him a terrorist, which there's absolutely no basis for this. There was a very flimsy accusation of him being a member of a gang that existed in a state that he had never visited, that he was a member of MS-13 in Western New York, where I am right now, coincidentally. He had never been to the state.
Speaking of which, let's bring in our guest. No.
Yeah. I never met this guy. Yeah. I don't know what he thought. I never saw him hanging around the clubhouse. Yeah. So he's lying about that. And this is after Pam Bondi said off the top of her head, she probably got a good talking to afterwards for saying this, that her interpretation of they would facilitate him returning was they'd provide a plane. So what is he talking about that he'd smuggle them in? She acknowledged there's a court order that they have to facilitate his return and says they would provide a plane. So even on its own deranged terms, what he's saying is absolute bullshit.
I mean, the question is preposterous. How can I smuggle a terrorist into the United States? I don't have the power to return him to the United States.
But you could release him inside El Salvador.
Yeah, but I'm not releasing. I mean, we're not very fond of releasing terrorists into our country. I mean, we just turned the murder capital of the world into the safest country of the Western Hemisphere, and you want us to go back into the releasing criminals so we can go back to being the murder capital of the world? No, that's not going to happen.
Well, they'd love to have a criminal, released into
I mean, there's a fascination.
They would love it.
They're
sick. These are sick people.
These are sick people.
Yeah,
these are sick people. The guys who think it is hilarious that an innocent man has been put in this hellish prison, they're not the sick people. It's the people asking about it who are the sick people. And by the way, Bukele has already sent back 9 people to the United States that the Trump administration insists are gang members. He sent back people who were from other Central American countries because he was afraid it would cause static between him and those countries. So he sent them back. I guess he smuggled these terrorists somehow back into the United States.
Right.
So now Trump was actually asked straight out if he wants to do this with American citizens or would consider it.
Just a follow-up question, a clarification. You mentioned that you're open to deporting individuals that aren't foreign aliens but are criminals to El Salvador. Does that include potentially U.S. citizens, fully naturalized Americans?
If they're criminals and if they hit people with baseball bats over their head that happen to be 90 years old, and if they rape 87-year-old women in Coney Island, Brooklyn, that includes them. Why do you think there's special category
Quite the thought to have.
They're as bad as anybody that comes in. We have bad ones too, and I'm all for it because we can do things with the president for less money and have great security. And we have a huge prison population. We have a huge number of prisons, and then we have the private prisons, and some are operated well, I guess, and some aren't. But he does a great job with that. We have others that we're negotiating with too. But no, if it's a homegrown criminal, I have no problem. Now, we're studying the laws right now. Pam is studying. If we can do that, that's good. And I'm talking about violent people. I'm talking about really bad people. Really bad people. Every bit as bad as the ones coming in.
Okay, so yes, we want to illegally remove Americans to foreign countries. And he says he's talking to other people who want to get in on this deal too. So you have a president who wants to essentially outsource penal colonies to other countries in order to get around the legal protections that the Constitution affords to the accused. But don't worry. It's only going to be the people raping grandmothers in Coney Island or whatever the fuck keeps him up at night. Whatever fantasy he has of the criminal alien running around Coney Island. You must have seen The Warriors right before this interview. But about 90% of migrants sent to Salvador lacked a U.S. criminal record. So you remember how they said they were only deporting violent criminals? You remember how when they came in, Dr. Phil's running around with ICE, and they said they're getting rid of the worst of the worst? 90% of migrants sent to Salvador. So he's saying it's only going to be people who are attacking the old ladies in Coney Island. But we saw how that worked out, whether it was only going to be the violent criminals who were going to be deported from the United States. Not only are 90% of them lacking a U.S. criminal record, 75% lack a criminal record anywhere. And they were not sent back to their home countries or a neutral third-party country. These people were sent to hell. Does this seem like an administration that once they think they can get away with that is not going to deport people to prison for dissent, accusing them of being aligned with terrorists? Patriot Act opens a lane for that a mile wide, as many people have been warning for 25 years since it passed, that the Patriot Act would only require an administration with the will to exploit its provisions for detaining terrorists for American citizens to be detained without evidence or trial. That's exactly where this is going. That is exactly where this is going. And in order to avoid having to make their case in court, they're going to deport these people. And they're going to do the same exact thing they're doing in Garcia's case. You can't interfere with the foreign policy of the United States.
Right. Yeah. It's amazing. Like how many of these facilities does he want built? He says, we're negotiating with some other people too. How many of these jails do you want? How many ultra-violent criminals do you think there are in this country? This is why, look, they obviously don't intend for this to apply to only violent criminals. It's obvious where they're coming from. It's obvious what their intentions are. But to the people, to the average moron who supports this, thinking, well, yeah, we got to get all the criminals out. This is why I say, in order to support this, you have to be either just an extremely broken and hateful person, which a lot of them are, or a complete paranoid lunatic who thinks there are millions of people in America who are going to come at you and beat you up and try and kill you. Or it's such a paranoid view of the world that you have to be to be sincerely on board with this. It's really crazy. And this is 90% of their efforts so far, it seems, have been throwing people out of the country and or putting them in jail.
Right.
That's been almost the entire program for the first 3 months.
Well,
by the way, what's the price of things? How's inflation going? Anything that those groceries come down?
And tariffs.
Yeah.
And tariffs.
Yeah.
Well, these people just get fed this information from media that they consume, very much like the libs. They get fed this information. They have no experience of it. I always talk about this YouTube channel that specializes in ginning up paranoia about New York. This guy, Cash Jordan, just straight up lies. I saw a headline the other day. Trump shuts down New York subways because they're too dangerous. That never happened. It never happened. But shit, man, if that's your media diet, yeah.
Yeah.
You think there's all these gangs running around just raiding stores, it's Thunderdome, it's crazy. So here's a good example of the worst of the worst. This is Trump's idea of the worst of the worst. That's what was going to happen with the immigrants, right? You got Garcia, and then you got a hairdresser, a makeup artist got deported. Does this look like the worst of the worst to you? It doesn't look like the worst of the worst to me. So now they had a little aside that was caught on camera, and it doesn't look like they were trying to hide it, where they were openly discussing how they're going to go after the homegrowns next, as Trump calls them.
Demanded the people wanted to change everything, and they wanted to. He demanded they love you. They love what you do. I'm not for supportive. I want them to do, homegrown criminals next. Yeah.
Homegrown criminals next.
Next. The homegrown. You got to build about 5 more places. Yeah, that's fair. All right. It's not big enough. No, yeah, come on. So this is a much different office than you remember.
Why do you think they're not the morons who are watching YouTube channels that are telling you that the subways don't run anymore? So why do you think they are so concerned with having a way to detain the number of people that he seems to be contemplating? Because they know they're going to fuck you. They know when their financial plans really come to fruition and people find out that they're not going to be building Ford plants in Sheboygan anytime soon, that these decimated factory towns are not coming back. That was never the plan, that they're just building a lifeboat for themselves and their criminal friends, and they're going to let everybody else drown, especially as AI becomes much more capable of doing a lot of jobs, even white-collar jobs. They got to have a place to send people. They're going to be out in the streets. They're going to be protesting. They're going to be really angry. They're building a police state for the next phase of their plan, which is the phase where everybody dies. Where I've been saying this over and over again. They are trying to kill you. They want you dead. With AI, they don't need a large labor force like they used to. There are too many people around. They're messing with the social safety net under very false pretenses. They're messing with Social Security, introducing new fraud measures that are just a way of making it harder to get. That's the whole point of those measures. They want less people. That is what all of this is aimed at. And there's going to be a moment where people realize that and rebel. They need some place to send them. So speaking of broken people, I voted for exactly this. That's in response to that video, right, where they're talking about the homegrowns. I cannot wait. I cannot wait. A lot of peasant minds out there. So here's a commentator with a blog, Jim Stewartson, who's done some reporting on Bukele. Nayib Bukele wants to be a black site penal colony for Trump, which is why Eric Prince went to visit CCOT in August, and why Bukele is playing games in the White House about innocent people being tortured in his prison. So here's Eric Prince's visit to Bukele.
Eric Prince, real pleasure. Nice meeting you. I saw you speak at CPAC. Yeah, it's fantastic.
Thank you.
I'm proud of who my enemies are. I've made a few around.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. That's good, right?
I visited CCOT yesterday.
Yes, I see that.
I was very impressed. And I will proudly go back and tell the good news story that it is possible to turn around chaos. I'm not surprised, but also disgusted that the State Department still lists El Salvador as a super dangerous war zone country.
Well, not
hopefully
anymore.
they will change that, because it's unsustainable really to keep it at level 3. We should be level 1. It's not going to happen, but at least level 2 it would be more sustainable.
Did better than that. They did level 1 for him. Nayib Bukele is the model for the North American Reich. He purged El Salvador's government and Supreme Court, got himself unconstitutionally reelected, and arrests anyone he wants. Due process is gone, but the trains run on time. Yeah, there was very little crime in most fascist countries, right? Isn't there a way to do something about crime without turning your country into a fascist hellhole? Not according to folks like this. So speaking to that level one, 4 days ago, the State Department under Marco Rubio, who went to visit Bukele in 2023 as a senator, changed the designation of El Salvador to a one normal, which is the safest. But the drop in crime that Bukele has been praised for comes at the cost of suspending constitutional rights, including the normal protections of criminal procedure, like the right to a speedy trial. El Salvador was also the first nation to recognize Bitcoin as legal tender in 2021. Note this confluence of the PayPal mafia and Eric Prince is not a coincidence. Prince, Thiel, and Musk have known each other for at least 25 years, and El Salvador is the model they want to implement in the United States of America. Exactly. Look at what they're doing. They are trying to use their power in the executive to subvert the constitution of the country, and they are trying to lock people up in indefinite detention with no due process, just like Bukele.
Right.
Bukele's their guy, man. He's their guy. So we mentioned this in the previous segment, but to elaborate on it a little bit, Jim McGovern, representative, has asked for an explanation because we don't actually know what Rubio agreed to with Bukele. We don't have it in writing. Read my new urgent demand for answers. The American people deserve to know what Marco Rubio and Bukele agreed to. So this is some of what's in the letter. Since March 2022, El Salvador's government has ruled under a state of exception, which suspended basic rights and due process, resulting in mass arbitrary detention, enforced disappearance, harsh and life-threatening prison conditions, and human rights violations. In 2024, Nayib Bukele followed in the footsteps of Daniel Ortega in Nicaragua and ran for a consecutive re-election despite a constitutional ban. Isn't Trump talking about how he wants to run for a third term?
Right.
There have also been reports of American citizens or their family members who have been arbitrarily detained under the state of exception. We are disappointed that you called for more Americans to be sent to horrific prison conditions in El Salvador, where at least 350 persons have died under custody, instead of urging the government of El Salvador to free Americans and their family members wrongly detained. Moreover, we are concerned that the Trump administration has failed to fully investigate alleged ties between President Bukele and MS-13 gangs. According to investigations by the Treasury Department, part of the way that Bukele brought crime down wasn't locking up MS-13 members, but actually bribing them, paying them off to bring down the crime rate so they could get this nice L1 rating that they've been seeking. Once again, Timothy Snyder here. The entire practice of the Holocaust of the Jews involved zones of statelessness. It is easier to move people away from law than it is to remove law from people. Almost all of the killing took place in artificially created stateless zones. This is why most of the camps, if you notice, were not in Germany. Most of the camps were in other countries. If we accept the idea that moving a person from one place to another undoes rights and disempowers the judiciary, we are endorsing the basic Nazism practice that enabled the killing of millions. Now, you might think that's hyperbolic. Well, so did the Germans. They thought there a lot of editorials they wrote saying, well, yes, the Nazis, they're very uncouth, but people who are saying that they're a real threat to the republic, this is hyperbolic. Listen, one of the things, we'll see this in the next segment because Jon Stewart is forced to concede this, and I think we are among the commentators who are forced to concede this. The craziest shit the liberals said about this crew turned out to be true. I'm just calling balls and strikes. I got to be honest. I don't like those people anymore now than I did before. They were right. We were wrong, man. We were wrong. Based on the first term, I always felt that the cries of fascism and that they're going to dismantle the Constitution were hyperbole. Not this time. Not in the second term. Everything they said was going to be the danger of his second term. It's turning out to be true.
Well, I would say it's actually worse, and I would say it's actually quite a bit worse. And that's where I didn't expect it to. I knew this was essentially going to be what they were going to do. I knew they were going to be, rousting protesters, harassing people. Like, I didn't downplay any of that.
But
that's why I didn't
why
support
would you
it.
think of this?
Well,
this
this is what I mean.
They would cut a deal with some authoritarian dictator to deport our prisoners. Like, why would you think of that?
Right. It's not that, like, I'm not surprised by the policies. I'm honestly not. That's why I said you shouldn't vote for him in the last election. That's probably a big reason why we couldn't not ever, contemplate supporting Donald Trump. But they're coming up with clever ways to do things that I didn't think they would.
Right.
Like, paying off this cartoonishly corrupt South American
It's the
dictator.
execution, not the intent.
Right. It's the execution, not the intent. I knew what the intent was, but how can you predict? Oh, yeah, they're going to find some strong man, just like I said, just comically corrupt leader. I mean, this guy, of course, this guy is negotiating with fucking gangsters. Take one look. He looks like a gangster. He presents as a gangster. Right, with the very trim beard and the suit and the slick back hair. He's a gangster. The fucking guy reads gangster. The way he acts, the way he conducts himself, the way he sits back in the chair, his whole body language is the guy's. Obviously, the guy is down with MS-13. Obviously, he's wheeling and dealing with these gangs to keep the murder rate low this season, so that my poll numbers go up. Like, it's the most obvious fucking thing in the world. And did I think that they would find him and come up with some scheme to pay him off to house our prisoners? No, I didn't think so. I knew they would deport student protesters because he said he would. I knew they would be very cruel to immigrants because he said he'd be very cruel to immigrants. None of that surprised me, which is why I didn't support him. But I didn't think they would find these kinds of ways to go about it, such that
this is what I'm saying. Like, yes, these intentions were clear. How quickly they just pushed it to constitutional crisis and pushed it to the courts have no authority over the executive.
Right.
And we're going to find ways to assert king-like executive authorities. And if the courts try to stop us, we're just going to tell them to go fuck themselves. That you got here in 2 months?
Right.
Yeah.
And the speed at which, they were able to come up with these workarounds. Yeah.
It's all that stuff they telegraphed. You knew they were going to crack down on student protesters. You knew they were going to do deportations. The manner that they are going about it is so extra constitutional, and they got there so quickly. I think that is a surprise.
Yes, that was a surprise to me. The execution, not the policy itself.
Not the intent.
That's a good way of putting it. Yeah.
All right.
So what do you got? All right. So we'll take a super chat break, and then you got one more on this, right? So we got 3.
Oh, hang on a second. Yeah. No. Yep.
Yeah,
that's it.
All right. So you got one more in this sequence here.
Yep.
Okay. Brad Gilbert.
Actually, I got to get videos in for that.
Okay. Brad Gilbert says, Spinfluencers right, Trump wins. I ask, but did we? There you go. Thanks, Brad. Michael Castillo, thanks for the $10, says, I'm back at work. I feel like $1 million. The doctors told me I had gastritis and I have a hernia. Ooh, yeah, that's nasty. They also want to get me a colonoscopy. Free Palestine. Oh, yeah, I've had gastritis before. That is brutal. I once had to go to the ER with that. I went to urgent care once because just abdominal pain to the point where like I could barely walk. Like I was hobbled. Like I couldn't even walk. I was just so inflamed. And so I went to urgent care.
I've never had that.
Yeah, they sent me to the ER. It's just irritation of the stomach lining. And they sent me to the ER because it was so painful. And yeah, that's what I had. So yeah, that is rough stuff, Michael. But best wishes to you. I'm having a SIBO test tomorrow. It's absolute hell. Small intestinal bacterial overgrowth test, where you gotta fast basically for 2 days. You gotta eat like broiled plain chicken for 2 days and drink nothing but water for 2 days. I'm like really starving. Yeah, it's pretty bad. And then tomorrow I go in and it takes 2 hours. I have to fast for 12 hours before, drink a little bit of water, and then the test itself is 2 hours. So, Yep, I have the old Jewish stomach, as they say. So I've been there. But you'll get through it, Michael. Hang in there. EO Shush, Trump is dumping Elon even though he used doubled Adelson's money, but going full steam with the Israeli agenda. I think Epstein's Trump file was given to Netanyahu before the FBI got to them. Thank you, EO Shush. And Aperna, thanks for the $2. Previous presidents did extraordinary renditions and sent people to horrific Guantanamo, including innocents. Now it's come home and people notice. Yep, good point. Very good point. And like I said, this is what I mean when I say that, the execution is what's surprising, not the policy. Like when they were talking about Guantanamo, I thought, oh, wow, that's extreme. But this is even worse. This is much worse than Guantanamo, because Guantanamo is sort of like a black site that we use, that we kind of preside over. And yeah, the whole reason we use it is because, we avoid due process and things like this. But here we literally just defer to another leader. It's completely out of our hands. If it's an El Salvadoran citizen, yep. Or if it's one of ours too. This is the other thing. This is the other thing that's really kind of scary about it. Like, he sent the others back because they, the people who were mistaken before, they were from neighboring countries. So it would create a diplomatic problem for him to keep them in custody. But if we're sending our own people there, and the only government he has to worry about is the United States government, then hey, we're happy if he keeps them. No such problem exists. Yeah, exactly. All right, are you ready?
Yeah.
All right, cool. All right, well, let's make it happen.
All right. The deportation standoff sending the U.S. toward a constitutional crisis, and it is. And if there's a bright spot here, this is getting a lot of attention. It's not on the back pages. It's very much the story of the day. Here's Chris Murphy talking about what's at stake here. And he's not right about a lot of things, this fella. I'm not a fan, but he's right about this.
You why the case of Kilmar Abrego Garcia should matter to you. This is an individual who came to the United States over 10 years ago. He was given protected status by a court, meaning that he could not be removed back to El Salvador because his life would be in jeopardy if he left. He's got American citizen children, American citizen wife. He's got a job here. Donald Trump ignored that court order and deported him. It was such a brazen violation of the law that the Supreme Court weighed in. In a rare 9-0 ruling, the Supreme Court said that Trump had to bring this individual back to the United States, but he still didn't do it. This is the constitutional crisis. It's the confrontation between the court saying that the president has to bring Abrego Garcia back home and Trump refusing to do it. And why should this matter to you? Because if the president has the power to jail and prison, to deport anyone, even if they have a legal right to be here as a citizen or through protected status given by the courts, then none of us are safe. Today, it's this El Salvadorian immigrant, but tomorrow it could be you or me. This matters This matters. This is the one power that we cannot give the President of the United States, the ability to take any of us off the street and imprison us just because the President believes he has the power, a power that he does not have.
Exactly. If the President has that power, what rights do you have?
Right.
You have none. You have no rights. If the President can at any time have you abducted to a foreign prison, you have no rights. Zero. I don't use the term, Mike Nellis, I don't use the term lightly, but Trump outright refusing the Supreme Court's order to bring Kilmar Abrego Garcia home, I'm going to add that in, I think he missed it, is an actual constitutional crisis. Yes, it is. Bernie Sanders, again, we're not fans, but he's right about this. In defiance of the Supreme Court and without any evidence, the White House claims that Garcia is a terrorist who was sent to the right place. This is a blatant lie. He is innocent. He cannot be allowed to rot in an El Salvadoran jail. He must be brought home. You know how seriously I take this? I missed the opportunity to imitate Bernie Sanders.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
In this clip. I don't feel it's appropriate. So here's Jon Stewart commenting on this a little bit with some of the clip that we saw earlier of Trump proposing to do this to Americans.
That you're open to deporting individuals that aren't foreign aliens, but are criminals to El Salvador. Does that include potentially U.S. citizens, fully naturalized American?
If it's a homegrown criminal, I have no problem. I'm talking about really bad people. Really bad people.
He's going to do that to U.S. citizens. I think the hosts of The View are about to get administratively errored. I got to tell you, I did not think he would get this authoritarian this fast. I really didn't. I'm sorry. Who could have known? Maybe if somebody out there had yelled at me on Blue Sky about this, I would have known. But no one did, except every day. In all caps.
Yep, I'll give it to the Pod Save crowd I interviewed. They said that was going to happen. I laughed at them. So here's Texas Rep. Joaquin Castro commenting on the case.
His story and his fate are a cautionary tale for every single American. If this administration will start to strip away the constitutional rights of people who have the right to be in this country, they will start with the people who are vulnerable, whom they can paint as undesirable, even if they lie about that, and they will slowly move on to other folks.
Exactly. This is why you should care. Even if you're very excited to see these immigrants getting deported because now tomorrow a guy will be able to raise his whole family on one salary and it's going to be 1957 all over again. Even if you believe that, you should care, because what's it worth if you live in a country where if you say something out of line at work, maybe it gets reported, maybe you get questioned, maybe you wind up in CCOT yourself.
Yeah, and I will just add one quick thing. If you are happy to see this happen to these immigrants, you're a worthless piece of irredeemable shit. Right away. I don't care what your, did you think about what'll happen? What about when it happens to you? When it happens to you, you'll fucking deserve it if you like what's happening now.
But not us.
Well, that's why, obviously present company excluded. I'm just saying, if you take pleasure in this, then, good when it happens to you. That's what I say.
Yeah. So this is Senator Chris Van Hollen, who is saying he's going to put his safety where his mouth is potentially.
Comments of President Bukele, and I look forward to meeting with him. I've requested to meet with him. I reached out to the ambassador here to ask to meet while he's here. But I've also made clear if we can't meet here, I do intend to go to El Salvador to discuss the release of this individual who is illegally detained, a Maryland man who's the father of 3 in a notorious prison in El Salvador. And I believe the president of El Salvador will recognize why it's important to allow him to return to the United States of America, because it is absolutely unjust and illegal to have this Marylander detained one more day in a notorious prison in El Salvador. Of course, President Trump could have just said, bring him home. Of course, he could have done that. But this is an administration that has lied about Mr. Abrego Garcia, right? The vice president of the United States tweeted out that he had a criminal record. That was a lie. They're just lying. They've gotten caught lying. They don't want to admit it. And they have an obligation to bring him home. But I will say the president of El Salvador should not now take it upon himself to say that he is detaining him for one more day, because that is kidnapping. I understand that the Attorney General said that we would provide a plane to bring him home. So all the president of El Salvador has to do now is hand over and release an innocent man and let him come home to his family.
Okay. So we haven't seen a congressman take this kind of a chance in South America since Jim Jones, and that didn't end well.
Yeah.
Hopefully Bukele's not handing out Kool-Aid to the population yet. But it sounds like he's serious about it. It doesn't sound like he's just grandstanding. At that point, if a U.S. congressperson actually goes to El Salvador, what happens? If I had to guess with this crew, Bukele refuses to meet with him and they tell him to go get his fucking shine box. If I had to guess, that's what's going to happen. But all credit to him if he's going to do it, and it looks like he will.
Yeah, that's an actual act of leadership, is to say, you know what, I'm this guy's senator, so I'm going to go down there and demand him back in person. And, I suspect it'll unfold exactly as you do. And as for, why they're not giving him back, yes, of course, he could just say, we need him back. There's a number of reasons why
they don't want to concede the principle.
They don't want to concede the principle. They don't want him to talk about the conditions there, I'm sure, or something else. But also, they don't want to limit this action to violent gang members. They want to be able to do this to essentially whoever they want to. And so in their minds, this may have been technically a mistake in the sense that they got out ahead of their skis a little bit, but was it really a mistake, big picture? No, because they don't just intend to do this to violent gang members. They intend to be able to do this with anybody who's either in the country illegally or who protests against Israel. This could be something that they are not acting in a way that suggests that any interpretation of what they're doing or intend to do is hyperbolic. They're not acting in a way that makes you say, well, no, I don't think they would do that. Right? There are certain people where you look at them and you say, there's nothing they wouldn't do. There's nothing they wouldn't do. And this is that. This is it. This is that crew. If they would do this to this guy, where you see the reporters ask them, and one after the other, from Trump to Bondi to Rubio to Miller to Bukele himself, one after the other, just brazenly lie about who this man is, an innocent man, brazenly lie about who he is, in defiance of a unanimous Supreme Court order to bring him back, then there's nothing they wouldn't do. Nothing they wouldn't do.
Exactly. Exactly. Because you're talking about people who are so psychopathic that they would do this to this man, continue to lie about him. Any normal person would say, oh my God, that's terrible. It was an accident. Yes, please bring him back.
Right.
What kind of people not only don't say that, but fight to keep a man that, let's be real, they know he's not an MS-13.
Of course they know. Yeah.
And to them, this man's life is nothing. If his life is nothing to them, so is yours. So is yours. They let you come to Madison Square Garden and clap like an idiot for Elon. Sure, they'll take your praise and your adoration, and they'll cut your throat the second you become inconvenient. They don't give a shit about you. Look at North Carolina.
Right.
Look at North Carolina. Trump used those people as props, lined them up in front of microphones, and just cut their FEMA funding. Just refused to extend their FEMA funding. That is how much you mean to them. Nothing. You're garbage. You're peasants. They want to. Maybe we'll cover this Thursday. Naomi Klein, with a co-author, just dropped a really interesting article in The Guardian about how these guys are taking what she calls the shock doctrine, essentially where the capitalists come in and take advantage of a disaster. And she's arguing they're creating the disaster. And what these people like Vance, like Thiel, what this whole crew has been working towards is to create these libertarian zones where there is no legal restraint on the power of people like them. And the peasants just work for them at will to the extent that they need peasants at all. A lot of the work gets done by robots, AI. They get to live in this paradise, and everyone else can just die. This is what I keep telling people. They want you dead. They want you dead. At best, they're indifferent to you dying, and at worst, it's part of the plan. They have no interest in preserving and enhancing the lives of people who are not of their class. Anything they say in that direction is a ruse because they feel like they still need your acquiescence.
Right. Exactly. EO Shush says Trump is dumping Elon, even though, oops, sorry, got that one already. Let's see here. Previous presidents. Oh, got that one already too. Okay, where is it? Okay, I think this is it. Yes. This is it. Now we're up to date. Sorry about that. EO Shush, thanks for the $2. MAGA doesn't understand if Trump doesn't follow the Constitution and abuses the National Emergency Act. 45,000 people die per year to gun violence, and a Dem Prez could use it to take away your gun. Thank you, EO Shush. Furrow Squeen says, hi, guys. Smashed your like button. 87-year-old women in Coney Island in Brooklyn not getting smashed either. Thank you for that, Furrow Squeen. Hey, we're at 643 likes. Let's knock that like button 24 more times so we get up over 666. Appreciate you all being here today. Thanks very much. Good crowd in here, 1,700 strong. In the YouTube room, 801 in the Rumble chat. Smash that like button, please. We are close to 666. Coming up on that number. EO Shush again. Breaking news. The entire Chicago Bulls team was just arrested. ICE was able to determine they were MS-13s by their tattoos and uniforms. Thank you, EO Shush. Appreciate that. Otacon, thanks for the $2. I hate to admit, but Hassan predicted they would square the circle of deporting all the cheap labor the oligarchs need by putting them into work camps under the guise of criminals. Look, Trump just said we're going to keep the agricultural workers here, keep some service employees here. Yeah. No, he'll keep the immigrants here who are competing with the working class jobs. Yeah, no, of course. This was what did I say? This I predicted entirely correctly, which is the entire immigration issue is going to be framed as a crime and safety issue, not as an economics, not as an issue about wages, but an issue about crime and safety. And that's all it's been. Hey, it's Vito P. Bukele could have been, yes, I like this. Bukele could have been cast as a character on the show Ozark. Cancer sucks, you guys. Right, exactly. That's exactly.
It's true, yeah. Yeah, you're right.
He's one of the guys in Ozark. 100%. As obvious a creep as you could ever see. Eric Suarez, thanks for the $5. Noboa, just elected president of Ecuador, is also building gulags. Those puppets are all over the world. Yeah, I would like to cover that. I would like to get a guest. I know the Gray Zone just did a big piece on that. I got to watch it, and maybe we'll bring one of those guys on to talk about it. Because I would definitely like to cover that story for sure. Thank you for that. Sorry, did I read the rest of your super chat? No, I don't think so. Noboa, just elected the president of Ecuador, is also building gulags. Those puppets are all over the world. I may have gotten carried away and forgot to read the rest of that. Sorry about that. Sean Brock, thanks for the $2. All while they're training cops for urban warfare. Yep. Sean Brock says, let's organize data strikes with a list of demands. Debt strikes with a list of demands. You corrected that. Thank you, Sean. Appreciate that very much. Seb Griffith said, supposed to be visiting my dad in England next month. Talk about awkward timing. Yeah, don't let Carrot Face get us nuked till I get back, please.
Well, you know, I'm planning on going over to Canada while I'm here. That'll be interesting.
Yeah. Seb, I think the part I'd be most worried about is getting back. I mean, that's the scariest part is coming back.
I mean, I'm not even kidding. I'm thinking about getting a burner.
What do you mean, getting a burner? What?
Burner phone just for the crossing.
Oh,
just for when I go over, not bringing my own phone, not bringing my normal devices.
Yeah, the Gambino crime family phones.
Exactly. I'm gonna have to give one of those disposable ones.
Yeah.
Yeah. I want
to throw this down Niagara Falls when you're done with it.
Yeah. Yeah. I want to see their museums in Toronto. I want to see if I would have access to like world-class kind of museums if I were living here.
Interesting.
Because obviously I haven't been to the art museum here, but I'm sure there's not much.
Russell sitting in Seacott. Listen, I heard it was a great museum. I just had to try. I had to try and see it.
I heard they had a copy of Hammurabi's Code.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Yeah.
That is to die for, literally.
Yeah. Luigi Vaccine Pew Pew says, my brother mentioned that maybe the Free Palestine movement is making the Zionists think it's free lands. Yeah, that was Mike Racine's joke. Free? What's free? Palestine? Oh, I have that already. Morty Duke, well, just a change in wardrobe, and you get the Pirates of the Caribbean. Thank you, Morty Duke. Appreciate that very much. Landrew is here with $100. Thank you, Landrew. Appreciate that very much, my friend.
Okay, I brought the bowl, but the bell was too big.
I'll
get some kind of bells up here.
All right, we'll do a digital cowbell for now, and then we'll do Landrew's
I haven't
drop.
had time yet.
Yeah,
haven't had time. I'm sure I'll. There are a lot of Eastern Buddhist mysticism stores. I'll find some.
And there we go. Landrew says, my friends and coworkers from Argentina and Chile told me this fascism would happen. I laughed and said we had a constitution. Seems I was wrong. Free Palestine. Yep.
I am Landrew. Landrew is dead.
Yep. Thank you, Landrew, very much. Yes, it is moving. They are moving faster and breaking more things than expected. Indeed. 100%. Thank you for your kind donation, as always, my friend. Appreciate that very much. EO Shush, Bukele at the press conference. You need people like me. You need people like me so you can point your fucking fingers and say, that's the bad guy. Me, I always tell the truth, even when I lie. That's right. Thank you, EO Shush. Appreciate that very much. Okay, what do we got
Told you
here?
never fuck me, you little monkey.
Yeah. All right, what else we got here? Okay, we got two more segments on the day, folks. Okay, so this is somewhat of a change of pace for a story, although not really. Harvard found their balls. Harvard's $2.3 billion gamble, what Trump demanded and how the university resisted. A month after Columbia bucked to Trump's demands, Harvard says it won't accept them. Here's how the battle unfolded. Al Jazeera did a good write-up on this. So, yes, Harvard is prepared to apparently forego some federal funding if it means not bending their policies to Trump's wishes. United States President Donald Trump's campaign to pressure universities into dropping diversity, equity, and inclusion measures and punishing student protesters has faced its strongest pushback yet when Harvard University rejected a series of demands from his administration. Monday's decision quickly prompted the U.S. Department of Education to freeze nearly $2.3 billion in federal funding for the Ivy League institution, ranked among the best universities in the U.S. In a response on his Truth Social platform on Tuesday morning, Trump accused Harvard of pushing political, ideological, and terrorist-inspired notions rather than acting in the public interest. So, yes, this was hot off the press this morning, 10:09 Eastern Time. Perhaps Harvard should lose its tax-exempt status and be taxed as a political entity if it keeps pushing political, ideological, and terrorist-inspired supporting sickness. Remember, tax-exempt status is totally contingent on acting in the public interest. United States President Donald Trump's campaign to pressure universities into dropping diversity, equity, and inclusion measures and punishing student protesters has faced its strongest pushback yet when Harvard University rejected a series of demands from his administration. Monday's decision quickly prompted the U.S. Department. Oh, sorry, that's a redundancy. The heads of the U.S. Department of Education, Department of Health and Human Services, and the General Services Administration co-signed a letter to Harvard on Friday. In this letter, they claimed Harvard has in recent years failed to live up to both the intellectual and civil rights conditions that justify federal investment. This was followed by a list of demands for the university in Cambridge, Massachusetts to fulfill. Key among them were, okay, so here were the demands that they did not fulfill. Promoting faculty committed to the Trump administration's demands of Harvard as articulated in the letter, and reducing the power of faculty and administrators more committed to activism than scholarship. Ending all affirmative action in faculty hiring and student admissions by August. At the same time, the letter demanded that the university ensure viewpoint diversity by abolishing criteria during admissions and hiring processes that function as ideological litmus tests. Changing the admissions process to prevent admitting international students hostile to American values, including, of course, students supportive of terrorism or anti-Semitism. Okay, so we don't have to get all into that. We know what that is. Changing disciplinary policies and forbidding the recognition and funding of student groups or clubs that promote criminal activity, illegal violence, or illegal harassment. That's really just an extension of the first one. Yeah. Implementing a comprehensive mask ban with immediate serious penalties for violation not less than suspension after some students have protested while wearing masks. The letter did not list any exceptions to this rule, such as health reasons. Closing all DEI programs and offices and carrying out organizational reform to ensure transparency with federal regulators. So essentially, the list was no DEI and no anti-Israel protests allowed. That was basically what their demands boiled down to. And, of course, viewpoint diversity in the criteria, which some people are saying this is kind of like DEI for the conservatives, right? Demanding that there's a balanced criteria in terms of what's taught. Harvard lawyers...
It's almost like J.D. Vance going and saying mean things to the Europeans meant nothing to these people.
Yeah, right, exactly. Like, they don't owe viewpoint diversity. Like, they can craft a curriculum. Like some people have mentioned, I don't have this, but like in a context of physics or science, you don't need to teach every theory of every subject, including in a history class. Like, part of what and look, I don't really subscribe to the idea of an esteemed university, but most people do. So if they're so esteemed, then isn't how they became so esteemed because they craft their criteria a certain way and their coursework a certain way? Like, of course, there needs to be certain liberties to do that.
All right, so this is what I'll say in terms of what you went through so far. Now, I do know academics, and I've also read articles about this, where, yes, a lot of these universities started to develop standards where, in order to be interviewed for a job, you had to be able to answer what you've done to further the cause of anti-racism. And do I think that's an appropriate criteria for interviewing a professor? No, I do not. At the same time, these people claim to be so invested in the free market. You would think their solution to that would be to let people decide not to go to Harvard, which indeed was actually happening. I never got to this story. Town and Country did a very interesting story about how the kinds of people who in the past would have gone to Harvard or would have gone to Yale were starting to go to these southern universities and universities in Texas that people like that never would have looked at in the past,
right?
Because of that. But yeah, was there legitimately, I mean, we've spoken about it for years. Was academia legitimately kind of hijacked by this very bizarre movement commonly referred to as woke. Sure. These guys are woke too. This is a very woke demand. It's just woke in another direction, right? You're just talking about creating a different protected class in the form of Zionists and Israelis, and now they have to orient. I mean, it's almost the same kind of policy, that you have to have an absolute zero tolerance for any diversity of opinion on a particular subject. It's just a different subject. As far as affirmative action goes, I think that the Supreme Court decision obliterated that. I don't think they're able to do that anymore anyway.
Yeah, in terms of admissions and faculty. Yeah. Harvard lawyers responded to the Trump administration by saying the university rejected the demands, arguing they violated its First Amendment rights and freedoms recognized by the U.S. Supreme Court. The U.S. Constitution's First Amendment upholds rights to free speech, expression, and assembly. It's a foreign press outlet, so they kind of explain certain things, such as where Harvard is located and such. The university said Harvard strongly opposes anti-Semitism and continues to make structural changes to ensure that the institution is a welcoming and supportive learning environment for all students. The Harvard letter said that while some of the government's demands are aimed at combating anti-Semitism, the majority represent direct governmental regulation of the intellectual conditions at Harvard. Yes, such as viewpoint diversity being required in every context. Yes, of course, you're imposing a regulation. That's not the First Amendment. That's the opposite. The university will not surrender its independence or relinquish its constitutional rights, Garber added. That's the current president of Harvard University. So the governor of Massachusetts, Maura Healey, tweeted her support of Harvard University. I join others around the country in extending congratulations and gratitude to Harvard University, President Garber, and the corporation for their leadership in standing up for education and freedom by standing against the Trump administration's brazen attempt to bully schools and weaponize the Justice Department under the false pretext of civil rights. We all agree anti-Semitism has no place in America and that should be fought in the workplace, classroom, and everywhere. Complying with the Trump administration's dangerous demands would have made us all less safe and less free. Barack Obama decided to chime in. Harvard has set an example for other higher institutions, rejecting an unlawful and ham-handed attempt to stifle academic freedom, while taking concrete steps to make sure all students at Harvard can benefit from an environment of intellectual inquiry, rigorous debate, and mutual respect. Let's hope other institutions follow suit. So Dave Rubin, woke Dave Rubin, triggered woke Dave Rubin says Barack Obama believes in systemic discrimination against whites, Jews, and Asians. A genuinely rotten human being. Okay, calm your tits, Dave. This is like, again, it's just amazing how they are the flip side of everything that they hate. You glean from that statement, well, he believes in discrimination against Jews.
Yeah.
What the hell? Like, what the hell are you? It's just from outer space. Okay, so here is Scott Jennings on CNN arguing in favor of cutting their funding, which we'll get to in a moment, what I think about this. But it's kind of interesting, his line of argument here. Very, very upset about Harvard's decision not to cave to Donald Trump.
This is all about... I think that this is all about anti-Semitism. I mean, I believe that what's happened on these campuses in the Ivy League and in other places, mostly private institutions, has been an abomination. And someone has to stand up for these Jewish kids.
It's not going to be the rabbi at the table.
Someone stands up. Someone has to stand. Someone has to stand up.
It's not going to be my friends in Jewish studies who had their grants
until Donald Trump came along in his administration and decided to connect federal funds to stamping out the scourge of anti-Semitism on these campuses.
Like Nick Fuentes.
Nobody
like the Sikh High
Nobody was willing to stand up for him.
Like standing up for Alliance
And I think the American people don't want a private university with a $53 billion endowment to get $1 while a Jewish kid is being discriminated against on campus.
I think, first of all, let me just say.
What a complete joke.
Why is it a joke?
You guys are nowhere. You have white supremacists in your party and in your administration. Oh, Nick Fuentes. Oh, whatever. It's
He's
just
not
a
in our
dinner.
administration.
Oh, Alliance for Deutschland. Oh, it's not really a Sikh Heil salute. Go to CPAC. There's anti-Semitic
unhinged.
conspiracy
You sound
theories
crazy.
all over.
I mean, there's some of what he said. I mean, this guy's a little bit of a mashugana, as we say in the tribe. But he is right. I mean, look, like, you do have the top advisor to Donald Trump endorsing the AFD party going to the mats for fucking Nazis. I mean, yeah, that is an underlying hypocrisy to this whole thing, is it not?
Do you not want these college campuses to do better? Do you condone what is
That's
happening?
what Harvard agreed to do. They already agreed.
I think the issue is not whether these universities should address anti-Semitism. The question is, how is the government using government power to do it? That there is a complete distinction between the university addressing its own problems and the government forcing them to do it in a particular way.
The entanglement comes when you take federal money. If Harvard wants to give up the federal money, you can do all the anti-Semitism I guess you want at Harvard or any other school, but that's not the issue.
Okay, well, they are prepared to give up the money. So what are you crying like a triggered bitch for? Like, why? Like, that's what they're saying. Okay, yeah, no, we're not going to comply with these demands. These infringe upon academic freedom, and so we're willing to do without this money. Like, so what is your argument? He wanted them to bend the knee and take the money. That's what he wanted. He seems to be upset that Harvard did not bend the knee and do more to crack down on quote-unquote anti-Semitism on the campus. Whereas a conservative argument that I actually have a bit of respect for would be this one that Hillsdale College made. There's another way. Refuse taxpayer money. Okay, so all right. So then don't take the money. That's what they did. Christopher Rufo, the federal government is not taking over Harvard. It is simply enforcing civil rights law. Okay, that's bullshit, enforcing civil rights law. If Harvard would like more independence, it's free to follow Hillsdale College and refuse to accept federal funds. Until then, it has reciprocal obligations that must be honored. Now, what some people are raising here is that the federal funding that goes towards like a lot of the scientific research that they do at Harvard for things like medicine and scientific development, that is in the public interest. And so to withhold funding from those programs because they're not tough enough on the pro-Palestine protesters actually is malicious in intent. And okay, I mean, I buy that to a certain extent. But my general overall take on this is, yeah, Harvard is one of the wealthiest institutions in the world. At one point, it was second only to the Catholic Church. I'm not sure if that's true anymore. That's an old stat. But it's an extraordinarily wealthy institution. I believe these for-profit colleges are scams. I think they are, gateways to an elite aristocracy that has grown so indifferent to the needs of working people that it has created the environment that we're in right now. So I do not believe they should be getting these federal funds. Harvard University, no doubt, has a very, very connected group of extremely wealthy philanthropists who can fund their scientific research if they need to do it. So I don't believe they should be getting funding, period. I don't believe Columbia University should be getting funding, period. I don't think these institutions should really exist. That's my overall take on it. However, given the parameters of the current conversation, yeah, they were right to tell them to fuck off. Just in principle. Like, I'm not a fan of DEI, but in principle, I would just say, no, we're not going to be bossed around by the government and have this funding held over our head in this specific a way, where you are taking this specific control over how we can operate. At that point, we become a compromised institution. And so even on the policies that I don't agree with them on, I do think in this admittedly narrow context, they were right to tell them, no, fuck you. You don't want to give us the money? Don't give us the money. We're not going to be controlled in this way. Because at that point, you're not Harvard anymore, for what it's worth. For what it's worth. I mean, that's my opinion, but I don't expect everybody to have my opinion on that. I'm just saying, in this context, I think they made the right decision.
Okay, so I'm obviously more sympathetic to the idea of the university as an institution than you are.
We should have universities. I just don't think we should have these behemoths with such outsized cultural influence.
Yes, what they have become, obviously, I am against. But it's inevitable that you're going to have certain universities that become the best universities. And if that's really because they have the best professors. They have the best courses. They're achieving the most breakthroughs in science and research. That's going to happen, and I don't think that's a bad thing inherently. Places like Harvard, Yale, Princeton, and so on have become elite production factories with no particular qualities of the people who graduate to justify their status in the society. Within the humanities, I've always said the dumbest people I ever dealt with in the arts came out of Ivy League schools. Just absolutely moronic people. In terms of the grant part of it, yeah, I'm pretty sympathetic to the idea that you shouldn't take money, so much so I never set up any of my arts companies as not-for-profits, which is unheard of. Everybody who sets up an arts company aspires to get the paperwork together and establish themselves and become a 501c3. I didn't, because I recognized from very early on, once you become dependent on that model, they own you. And you want to see that at play, you'll never see an arts company do an anti-smoking piece, because they get a lot of money from tobacco companies. They get a lot of money from Philip Morris. One of the reasons that you don't see, as I often decry, you don't see any real discussion of class, of unions, why the art scene is absolutely obsessed with identity issues in very much the same way the Democratic Party is. There's a reason for that. They get their money from the same people.
Right.
They get their money from the same corporations. Amazon, these companies, they're giving money to arts companies. They're giving money to campaigns. And in both cases, the condition of that money is you can talk about queerness until the cows come home.
Right.
But you do not say shit about unions. You don't say anything about economic inequality. You don't say anything about wages. Even now, you look at the conversation, it's all that, even as the country comes apart, because that's where they get their money from. Same thing with these universities. A big part of why they got overwhelmed with wokeness is the people who give them money. Again, it's these same corporations that didn't want any legitimate economic critique to be part of the conversation in these academic institutions. So they elevated the Ibram X. Kendis and they downplayed the Richard Wolff types so that the conversation is dominated by this. This is why so many people who are nominally left are obsessed with these subjects, because frankly, they went through these universities and got brainwashed into channeling all of their idealistic impulses to fight for victims and to fight for the oppressed. They had it all channeled into these very narrow identitarian definitions. That is by design. So yes, if you have a university and you don't want to be controlled, you should do what Hillsdale has done. I think all of these universities should stop taking those grants. Frankly, they should stop taking money from these corporations too, because a lot of what the Trump administration is complaining about is a result of them taking that money. But of course, what they really have an issue with is not that they're owned. It's a question of who owns them.
Right. Exactly. And that's why Scott Jennings had that little mini meltdown there, because his concern is not with, them being owned. No, he wants the governments to basically be able to dictate what they teach and how they police their students' behavior. It's a very authoritarian argument that he's making. No. How dare you refuse the government's help? You should accept the government's help, but you must do so on their terms, right? To the point where even when they say, all right, you know what, if this isn't going to work out, then I guess we just won't take the money. He won't just take that. He acts like, he almost, from watching that clip, you would act like you would come away from that clip thinking that wasn't the decision. You would come away from that clip thinking that they're asking for the money anyway, which they said, look, they're willing to, they're willing to go without if it means, not caving.
Right. Yeah. You should be celebrating, right?
Right. Exactly. All right. Let's do our scroll here. Sorry, I thought I had this ready. There we go. Okay, all right. Hey, folks, if you like what we do here and you want to help us keep doing it, by far the best way you could do that is to become a member. You can become a member at patreon.com/DoDissidents, DoDissidents.substack.com, or you can join our locals at DoDissidents.locals.com. You get a lot of perks in addition to the good karma that comes from supporting independent media. You get your name up in lights here on the show scroll. You also get call-in access to all of our post-show Q&As, which happen once a week every Sunday night over on Rumble. You also get call-in live stream access to our full-length pre-recorded interviews, film club exclusive streams, content and call-in exclusive streams. So we do 2 live streams a month exclusively for paid members. You also get full live stream replays the day after they air, ad-free. So if you miss a show, or if a show was split between YouTube and Rumble, and not all of the show is in the same place on a forum that you want to view. I know the Rumble ads can be quite a lot. You get a full-length replay of the show, ad-free, emailed to you. That would have come in handy big time on Sunday when we had a little issue that we won't talk about unless it happens again, shall we say. But in that case, hey, it really came in handy being a member. For just $5, you got the full live stream replay, uncensored, uncut, emailed directly to you the next day. So that's
you would think you're a bald fuck who can't produce his own testosterone.
Yeah.
But you're getting paid tens of millions of dollars to gas up oligarchs.
Yeah.
You could leave a couple of schmucks with less than 100,000 subscribers alone, right?
Yeah, exactly. You would think so. So those are the perks that you get for signing up. The ad-free replays, people are enjoying. People are loving those. People are saying great things about those. They've never seen anything like it. So DoDissidents.locals.com. It's just $5 a month. It helps sustain the operation tremendously. It helps censor-proof us. It helps us guarantee that we can keep going no matter what our fate should be on these big tech platforms that we are at the mercy of. So DoDissidents.locals.com. Thank you very much. If you're watching on Rumble, you can smash the join button right underneath the video player, and that takes you directly to the sign-up page. Okay, what else we got here? We got Sean Brock. Thanks for the $5. What if we canceled our streaming subscriptions from Pedo Wood and put that money towards housing or health care, or literally anything for working people? All right, that's what you call hiding a point within a point. You know what I mean? I think the point you really wanted to make there was about Hollywood. But well said. That's not a bad idea.
I mean,
Netflix is getting very expensive.
It is getting expensive. They're doing a very good job destroying their own business without any formal movement.
That's right. Hupo says Guantanamo set the stage for this mess. Innocent men jailed and tortured and called terrorists, so no one cared. Absolutely, 100% right. Nocturnal Human says Rumble needs to get their app to work without burning up my phone to 200 degrees and draining my battery from full in 2 hours. Well, I mean, you're watching, it's about 3 hours or 2 hours of video. I don't know what kind of phone you have. My iPhone battery is shot to hell now. So I don't know if it's Rumble or maybe the phone. CEB Applejack says, thank you, DoDissidents. Fam, I got so much traffic to my Substack. Appreciate that. Tim Cass silenced my super chat after I asked how much Netanyahu pays for his propaganda. Oh, there you go. There you go. And I did read your article, Applejack. Thank you for sending that. And, I mean, in terms of advocating non-voting, I take the slightly more passive point of view there, which is, vote, if you want to vote, but we have not really talked about electoral politics very much since the new Trump term. Like, I wouldn't put your eggs in that basket in the least. I mean, we covered the Bernie AOC stuff once because that's about the coverage I think it warrants. Yeah, but thank you for sending it. Appreciate that. Genitilis, if only they had the foresight to install an extra ventilation shaft or two when they constructed the federal government, we'd be further ahead today. Freaking womp rats. Thank you, Genitilis. Appreciate that very much. Free Palestine with purchase of equal or greater stateless nation. Thank you. Yes, thank you, Stoop Sign. Appreciate that very much. Furrows Queen says, oh my God, Russell, the Royal Ontario Museum is my favorite place on earth, and you're in luck. The current special exhibit is Auschwitz. Not even kidding. I've just
Is it really?
looked. Yeah, interesting. All right. Well, thank you.
Really, what I'm curious about. Okay, so this is stupid in a way, but in a way, it's not, given the kinds of interests that I have. Like, one very cool thing about living in New York City is you're studying the ancient world. You can go to the Met, and okay, the New York museums are world class by American standards. They're really not as good as the museums in Europe because they got to the looting other cultures game late. So, the British took all the good stuff, the British and the French. British Museum and the Louvre have all the really impressive stuff, but it's better than anything else you're going to find in America. So I'm kind of curious, would I kind of have that if I go over to Toronto? We will see.
We will see, and that's a great segue to our final segment of the day, which is about Canadian tourism, oddly enough.
Yes, making America great, one canceled vacation at a time. So Governor Gavin Newsom, the great white hope, as they call him in Democratic circles, he put out an ad soliciting business from our friends to the north.
We launched a new international campaign focused on encouraging Canadians to come visit the great state of California. The state of mind in the United States of America has dramatically changed as it relates to the approach to Canada. And we want to make sure we send a message to our Canadian friends up north to come to a state where 2 million Canadians visited last year, to come visit a state where there's something for everybody. Visit California.
Things are bad all over with the Canadians. Air Canada, Delta, United, they're cutting U.S.-Canada flights because the bookings have plummeted. They don't have enough people to justify running their normal schedule of flights.
You also don't want to pay for a round-trip ticket when you're not going to be allowed back home.
Well, that's true.
It's a waste of money.
It's a waste. Canadians are cashing out on their American vacation homes. Now, I didn't even know this until all this blew up, so to speak. Palm Springs is a prime destination for Canadian tourists. That is a big, snowbird location. They'll go and spend the winter in Palm Springs. So this is very devastating to that community in particular. That's part of why Gavin Newsom is trying to put out the friendly flag. Oh, Canada, wait. Tourist dollars are fleeing Palm Springs due to Trump provocations. So that little flag there, that's part of a whole campaign. They truly are our neighbors. Palm Springs shows love for Canada with maple leaf banners. Wait, come back. Kenny Cassidy, Director of Business Development for Acme House Company, which manages vacation rental properties in Palm Springs, says Canadians often book stays of 1 to 3 months, a full year in advance. But when it comes to rebooking for next year, they're just declining, said Cassidy. It's going to be most noticeable come next season. It could have a ripple effect beyond guests not booking to come back and spending rental dollars. If they're not here, they're also not going to restaurants and buying other services. All right, so the Canadians already had their book tripped, probably no refund on the deposit. So this season, there's still some of them there, but they're not booking for next year. Laura Mezzacapo, accounting manager for the Vancouver-based travel agency, The Travel Group, said that at this time of year, travel agents with her company would be busy booking spring break and summer vacations to Las Vegas, Los Angeles, San Francisco, and Palm Springs. But since mid-February, U.S. bookings have plummeted. Corporate bookings, she said, are down 70 to 80%. And instead of vacations in the American West, clients are opting for Mexico. A 2021 study done for Visit Greater Palm Springs found the Canadians owned 7% of second homes in the Coachella Valley, far more than any other country outside the United States. Another study in 2017 found that roughly 303,600 Canadians visited the Coachella Valley that year, spending more than $236 million.
So that's like their West Bank.
Yes, exactly.
Palm Springs is the Canadian West Bank.
They occupy it
occupy
for a few months a year anyway. So have no fear, though. Have no fear. Gavin Newsom, following up on his announcement, cut an ad.
In Canada have always shared so much in common. Sure, you know who's trying to stir things up back in D.C. The Golden State and Canada have always shared so much in common. Sure, you know who's trying to stir things up back in D.C., but don't let that ruin your beach plans. California, it's the ultimate playground. 2,000 miles from Washington and a world away in mindset. From our iconic beaches and national parks to world-class wine, food, and outdoor adventure, there's something here for everyone. Last year, nearly 2 million Canadians visited California, because here in California, we've got plenty of sunshine and a whole lot of love for our neighbors up north.
Blowing pussy.
Yeah, you know what? A lot of places have sunshine where they don't have to worry they're going to wind up in ICE detention because of an oopsie. They don't have to worry they're going to get sent to CCOT because they have a crown tattoo. So, yeah, this is hitting a community like that that's to some extent financially dependent on that tourism, but it's happening in New York too. There are tour operators that have been speaking about this. They're not just have the Canada bookings dried up, Europe, no bookings coming in from Europe. I mean, who's going to come here now? Why would you take a vacation here? This is something that this group of narcissists and psychopaths we have running the country now don't think about. It's an intangible soft power, but if you throw the ick on the United States in the way that they are doing, that has enormous consequences. Now people don't want to watch American movies as time goes on. They don't want to. They were already moving away from them because they suck, but they don't want to watch our TV shows. They don't want to consume our products. Maybe eventually you don't want to buy an American phone, so you move off the iPhone because it's American made. If you start to make your country that distasteful to everyone around the world, it's going to have enormous financial consequences in people's consumer choices. They're not going to want to consume American things, and they're not going to want to come to America when they decide how they're going to spend their vacation. Why would you? Why I wouldn't.
No, of course not. And you know, the thing that's funny about this is that, you know, Newsom very directly in the ad itself makes a point of assuring Canada, no, California is not like the rest of America, right? Because he knows they're avoiding America. The problem, of course, with that is that the feds can nab you in California just as easily as they can in Mississippi. They're feds. That's why they're feds. Well, you think Vermont is a MAGA state? These last two arrests were in Vermont, or the last one was in Vermont. The first case that we covered. They can nab you anywhere.
I cannot think of anything you could do to more effectively overnight destroy the tour industry than to arrest tourists arbitrarily and have them go back home with horrific accounts of the 2 weeks they spent in ICE detention. Really, I literally could not think of anything you could do that would so quickly and thoroughly destroy that entire industry. Who's going to risk that?
It's really remarkable, and this is a consequence of the sort of change from, you know, Trump's first term to this one, whereas, you know, during Trump's first term, most of the people who were nervous were, you know, the sort of elite class that had been caught with their pants down. They were very afraid as to what he was going to do, not to them in terms of like their actual liberty. I mean, we weren't,
Right.
he wasn't talking, like he very famously decided not to prosecute Hillary Clinton, even though he said he wanted to in the debate. But they considered, his presence to be a real threat to their standing in society. They were the ones who were most triggered by him. Now, the ones most triggered by him are immigrants, are students, are anyone with an opposing view of United States foreign policy. No, they have really just turned their sights on the ordinary person, broadly speaking, for all their talk about how, well, we're only going after criminals. That is demonstrably bullshit. I mean, we know now for a fact that that's nonsense. And so if you have the government that is just so incredibly and relentlessly hostile to ordinary people, and you're an ordinary person who's lucky enough not to live here, why would you go out of your way?
Why would you?
Like, why would you want to go? Like, why would you put yourself in that situation if you didn't have to?
Look,
it's supposed to be leisure time.
Honestly, boiling it down, I thought about this, being up here for a month like this. Obviously, the open question is, well, do you want to even stay in the country? I mean, really, the only reason I am even thinking that way is because, particularly at a moment like this, I constantly talk about how the artists have fallen short of meeting the moment. I want to meet the moment. I want to produce art, and I have a great platform to try to fill in some of what I see as a really tragic gap in the conversation. But that is honestly the only reason. I mean, otherwise, I would definitely just go live abroad for now. Like, there's no way I would say, and I might end up doing that.
Right.
It is literally the only reason I'm not doing that is because that would mean it would not be feasible to do that anyplace else. I would have to stay in America. Because the people, even if you did try to do work someplace else, they're not American. They're not going to, connect to what you're talking about in the same way.
Right. Yeah. No, I mean, it's a very, very unpleasant place to be. And the whole point of going
terrible,
on vacation
man.
is to take
It's
a load
terrible.
off. Yeah. And
Right.
who wants to do it here?
For a vacation?
Yeah, for a vacation. Yeah. 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 No, I mean, and, it's something that we didn't really think about, that would be kind of the first real sign of things. Maybe not the first, but among the first noticeable changes in the sort of, economic life of people in this country, especially in places like Palm Springs and in New York. And, I'm sure Disney is probably hurting, hey, wait a minute. Is this a desirable place to spend time? Right. That's a big
Why
question.
would you?
That's an important question. Yes.
That cultural capital has just been blown apart. And just like our civil liberties, it's been blown apart more quickly than you could have thought possible.
Yeah.
Like that whole mystique of like, oh, I want to see America. They burned that down in like 2 months.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. 100%. No doubt about it. Vito P says a tribute to Landrew. Thank you, Landrew. Cancer sucks, you guys. Vito P.A. tribute to Landrew. Thank you, Landrew. Cancer sucks, you guys rock. Thank you, Vito. Appreciate that. Morty Duke says the only thing to get this chaos under control is a biometric digital ID for the world. Oh, they'd never try that. Healing Tarzan, I'd argue the second Trump administration is kind of a liberal self-fulfilling prophecy. By screaming Hitler and Putin so much, they made Trump bulletproof and provided him cover to conform to that image. Indeed, I think that's a good point. Ding Dong Doodoo Daddy says, here's $5 before I get deported for unpaid parking tickets. Thank you. Appreciate that. I have a suggestion. Maybe you could have an annual debate versus people in the audience about any disagreements people might have. Dissident duels. Well, those could be. I mean, people can call in on the Q&A if they want to, and fight with us there. Okay, let's see here. We got Noah Goop says, I won't visit America, not because I took tariffs personally like many other Canadians, but because it's a freakish genocidal state that might search my phone and then throw me in a cell for 2 months. Yes, indeed.
Yeah, exactly.
100%. Furrows Queen, should add, I've never been to London, even. Yes, we know that about you. Yes, Furrows Queen, which is where the good museums are. ROM is great. I had so many choices to see Dave. I chose to go to Toronto as USA makes me nervous. Really is Auschwitz. Yeah, definitely avoid if possible. That should be our new slogan. America, avoid if possible.
Avoid if possible.
Yeah. We're hurting on tourist income down here in Florida, too, between Trump's antics, Ron DeSantis going after Disney, and hurricanes. This state is headed for a major crisis. Yeah, I believe it. Otacon. EO Shush, I was skeptical at first when I joined Locals, but since I joined, all of my dreams have come true. And in the archives, the one simple trick doctors don't want you to know, I lost 30 pounds and grew my hair back. Beautiful. Well, thank you. What a testimonial from EO Shush. Appreciate that very much. Sam
should do our ad reads.
Yeah, should do our ad reads, yeah. Sam, as I am, says maybe the U.S. can start attracting more tourists by promoting itself as the world's biggest and most realistic escape room experience. Yes, yes, that is a good point. This is basically a giant escape room. Thank you for that. Appreciate that. And thank you all very much for being here today. That is our show. We will see you back here again at 12 p.m. Eastern this Thursday. So, once again, folks, if you are so inclined to become a member, you can do so at dudissidents.locals.com. If you would like to support our Special Projects Fund, where the next big one is our documentary on Uhuru, which requires a trip to St. Louis, both myself and Russell, to make a film about Omali Yeshitela and the African People's Socialist Party. You can check that out at givesendgo.com/do-dissidents. We are at 861 likes. Beautiful. All right, folks. Well, that wraps us up for the afternoon. Thank you very much for being here with us. Appreciate you all. Smash that like button on the way out, please. Smash that subscribe button on YouTube. Smash that follow button on Rumble, and join us this Thursday, 12 p.m. Eastern, for our next regularly scheduled broadcast. Until then, thanks for being here with us today. Be safe and be well.
Courage!
Please clap.